history. It's often pictured as something firm, chiseled into rock, preserved in brittle scrolls, or inked onto parchment by ancient hands. But in truth, much of humanity's past may be hidden beneath something far less durable: water. For most of the last 100,000 years, Earth didn't look the way it does now. Towering glaciers stretched across continents, and sea levels sat nearly 400 feet lower than today. It might not sound like a lot, but that change was enough to redraw coastlines, exposing vast landscapes that are now completely underwater. And where do humans love to live? Near the coast. Even now, many of the world's most iconic cities, Alexandria, Tokyo, Venice, cling to the sea's edge. So it stands to reason that ancient civilizations did the same, building communities, temples, and marketplaces on lands that are now hidden beneath the ocean's surface. After the last ice age ended around 12,000 years ago, everything changed. Ice sheets melted, oceans rose. Slowly but steadily, shorelines crept inland, and as the seas swallowed those low-lying lands, they may have also consumed entire chapters of human history. Fields, homes, statues, even whole societies submerged and forgotten. This is what archaeologists call the submerged prehistory problem. It's not that people didn't live there, it's that they did, and their entire existence now lies underwater. And here's the kicker. We've only mapped about 10% of our ocean floors in detail. The rest, a dark, silent frontier. So, what's waiting down there? Join us as we explore strange discoveries that hint at forgotten civilizations beneath the sea. From underwater roads to megalithic ruins, these sites raise more questions than answers. Some are widely studied, others are controversial, and a few are ignored altogether. Let's begin our descent. No need for mythical continents or sci-fi explanations, just real unexplained remnants, and the science chasing their secrets, the sunken city off the coast of Cuba. In 2001, drifting silently over the deep waters off Cuba's western tip, the research vessel Ulysses carried with it little fanfare. On board, Canadian oceanographer Paulina Zalitsky and her team were conducting routine sonar mapping, part of a government project meant to chart the seafloor and scan for unusual geological formations. Zalitsky, a veteran of Cold War submarine tracking and underwater topography, wasn't seeking lost cities or rewriting history. She was scanning for underwater anomalies. She got far more than she bargained for. As the sonar swept across the depths, it picked up something unexpected. Beneath 2,000 feet of dark, crushing water far deeper than most human eyes ever glimpse, the ocean floor revealed geometric patterns. Not random bumps or rocky ridges, but straight lines, sharp angles, repeating forms. On the monitor, strange shapes emerged. Rectangles, near-perfect circles, grids, cross-hatching. These weren't natural patterns. These looked architectural. Zalitsky knew to be cautious. Sonar images can distort, they can trick even seasoned scientists. But this was different. There was consistency, order. The anomalies spread over a wide, flat plateau bordered by trenches. The largest structures spanned nearly 400 meters across. The sonar data didn't scream rock formations. It suggested something else, something built. The media response was electric. News outlets dubbed it the Cuban Atlantis, invoking Plato's legend of a lost civilization swallowed by the sea. Pundits speculated wildly. Was this evidence of a prehistoric city lost to rising seas? A glimpse into humanity's forgotten chapter? Were these pyramids, roads, monuments from a civilization erased from the record? Zalitsky and her team deployed a remotely operated vehicle. The ROV dove down, vanishing into the blue as cameras rolled. It returned grainy, low-resolution footage, blurred by sediment and the crushing depth. Yet through the murk, shapes could still be made out. Blocks that appeared stacked, stones that seemed smoothed by more than just erosion, features that resembled steps, corridors, and even walls. The lighting was poor and no samples could be retrieved, but the imagery stirred something primal. Recognition. These weren't just boulders, they looked like ruins, but just as quickly as the find caught the world's attention, it vanished. There were no follow-up missions, no academic publications, no government support. Funding dried up. Access to the site was quietly restricted. Political tension between Cuba and the US complicated international research. And the site, possibly one of the greatest discoveries in underwater archaeology, was left untouched. Mainstream science responded with measured skepticism. The depth was the primary sticking point. At 2,000 feet below sea level, any structure would have had to be built over 10,000 years ago, long before Mesopotamia, Egypt, or even Göbekli Tepe. At that time, according to standard history, humans were simple hunter-gatherers, with no architecture, no cities, no complex society. The implications were staggering. If the site was artificial, it would upend everything we think we know about the dawn of civilization. Some geologists argued for natural causes: underwater currents, tectonic shifts, massive coastal landslides. It's possible, they said, that ancient structures near the coast slid into deeper waters during seismic events. Others suggested the patterns were illusions, coincidences of rock fracturing and erosion interpreted through low-resolution sonar. But none of these theories fully accounted for the symmetry, the grid patterns, the regularity, the scale. If the Cuban site truly holds the remnants of a lost city, it would radically change the map of ancient history. It would suggest that civilization, real civilization, with design, engineering, and perhaps even language, existed far earlier than anyone dares to admit. It would imply a forgotten chapter of humanity wiped clean by the sea, its story preserved not in scrolls or stone tablets, but in the silt and sonar of the deep. There are also whispers, quiet, cautious whispers, linking the site to broader anomalies in the region. The so-called Bimini Road near the Bahamas, unexplained underwater formations off the coast of Yonaguni, Japan, the submerged ruins near Dwarka in India. Together, they form a pattern, a suggestion that long ago great cities may have flourished on now-drowned continental shelves. And then, as the Ice Age ended and sea levels rose, they vanished beneath the waves. Could the Cuban site be part of a lost global network? A civilization predating Sumeria and Egypt, one connected by sea and stone, memory and myth? Some researchers believe it's not only possible but likely. They point to oral traditions from Mesoamerican tribes, Caribbean islanders, and even Andean civilizations. Stories of a sunken land, a great flood, an ancient wisdom that came from the ocean. And then there's the silence. The sea keeps secrets, but it also remembers. The mystery of Bimini Road, just 80 kilometers east of Miami, beneath the warm, glass-clear waters near North Bimini Island in the Bahamas, lies one of the ocean's most enigmatic and hotly debated formations, Bimini Road. It's not buried in the crushing dark like the Cuban ruins, or hidden in hard-to-reach trenches. Instead, it sits in plain sight, only about 6 meters below the surface. Its accessibility makes it all the more tantalizing, as if the sea is daring us to solve its mystery. Stretching nearly half a kilometer, this formation consists of massive limestone blocks, flat, rectangular, and curiously aligned in what appears to be a deliberately organized path. These stones are enormous, many measuring between 2 to 4 meters across and about a meter thick. Laid out end to end, they form a gentle curve that disappears into the deeper ocean, like an ancient causeway vanishing into time. To anyone peering through a snorkel mask or dive goggles, it looks unmistakably man-made, a submerged road, a collapsed pier, or the weathered foundation of something long forgotten. The first mainstream attention came in 1968 when diver Joseph Manson Valentine documented the site. What he found was enough to excite speculation far beyond the diving community. The timing, some noted, was eerily close to the predictions made by psychic Edgar Cayce, who decades earlier had claimed that remnants of Atlantis would be discovered in the Bahamas and had specified the year 1968. For those already drawn to the legends of lost civilizations, Bimini Road seemed less like an accidental geological feature and more like a prophecy realized. But beneath the mystical allure lies a scientific puzzle. The formation is composed of beach rock, a sedimentary type of limestone formed in coastal tropical environments. This particular type of rock forms when carbonate material, like shell fragments and sand, are cemented together by minerals in seawater. It is common in areas like the Bahamas, yet Bimini Road's layout does not appear random or accidental. The blocks are oriented in a line, curve gently, and in some places are stacked, interlocked, or even supported by smaller stones, almost like rudimentary foundations. Divers and researchers have observed details that further deepen the mystery. Some stones exhibit smooth, flat surfaces that seem too regular to be natural. Others appear beveled or shaped. There are reports of what look like wedge stones inserted between slabs, reminiscent of early construction techniques. Some even believe the road continues beneath layers of sand, suggesting the visible portion may be just the beginning of something much larger. Mainstream geologists, however, urge caution. Their explanation relies on a well-documented natural process. In shallow marine environments like the Bahamas, beach rock can fracture over time along orthogonal planes, vertical and horizontal axes, resulting in rectangular patterns. Wave action, currents, and tectonic activity can also shift and stack these blocks in ways that appear organised to the human eye. In this view, Bimini Road is not a monument. It's a coincidence born of environmental forces. But this natural theory, while plausible, doesn't satisfy everyone. Critics argue that the precision and uniformity of the stones go beyond the randomness expected from nature. The length of the path, the alignment of the blocks, and the apparent layering all raise eyebrows. Moreover, the site's location at the edge of the Gulf Stream adds to the intrigue. If ancient people had developed early seafaring abilities, the Bahamas would have been a logical location for trade, ceremony, or even settlement. One alternative theory posits that early humans may not have built Bimini Road from scratch, but rather discovered a natural formation and enhanced it. Perhaps they chiseled edges, rearranged blocks, or repurposed the layout for a cultural or ritualistic function. This hybrid theory acknowledges natural processes while leaving room for human ingenuity. Could Bimini Road have served as a breakwater, a dock, a ceremonial walkway, or even a symbolic threshold into the spiritual realm? Yet there's a glaring problem: the lack of artifacts. No tools have been found at the site. No pottery shards, bones, carvings, or clear signs of habitation. Archaeologists point out that without cultural material, items unmistakably shaped or used by humans, it's nearly impossible to confirm human involvement. This absence of evidence has kept Bimini Road firmly in the anomalous but inconclusive category of marine archaeology. Still, the intrigue remains undiminished. Part of what makes Bimini Road so compelling is its ambiguity. It sits at the edge of certainty, where the boundaries between nature and intention blur. It challenges our instinct to neatly label phenomena. Is it a relic of a forgotten age, or a remarkable example of geological mimicry? And if it is the work of human hands, who were they, and what were they doing in the Bahamas long before history books say they should have been? The cultural context adds another layer. Oral traditions among Caribbean islanders and Mesoamerican peoples often speak of lost lands beneath the sea, sunken islands, drowned cities, and ancient migrations. In these stories, water is not just a threat, but a keeper of memory. Could Bimini Road be part of that watery archive, a stone sentence in an epic we've only just begun to read? Despite decades of debate, Bimini Road remains unsolved. New technologies like high-resolution sonar, ground-penetrating radar, and underwater drones may one day reveal more. But for now, we are left with questions. A string of stones, a submerged curve in the sea, a riddle without a cipher. Sometimes, the most powerful mysteries are those hiding in plain sight, and sometimes the ocean's silence says more than 1,000 artifacts ever could. From the sunlit shallows of Bimini, our next journey dives deep into colder waters, where a massive underwater monument off the coast of Japan awaits our curiosity and our questions. The Yonaguni Monument, Japan. In 1986, just off the coast of Yonaguni-jima, the westernmost island of Japan's Okinawa prefecture, a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake was scouting for tourist dive sites. What he found wasn't coral or caves or vibrant marine life. It was stone. Massive, angular stone. An immense and rigid presence jutting up from the ocean floor like the bones of something ancient. Rising abruptly from the seabed, about 25 meters below the surface, a colossal formation loomed. Broad platforms, sweeping steps, sharp vertical walls, and steep ledges. It looked less like a reef and more like ruins, calculated, crafted, almost like a temple swallowed by time. And that's exactly what it's been called ever since. Welcome to the Yonaguni Monument, one of the most fiercely debated underwater sites on the planet. A riddle etched in stone and drowned beneath millennia of rising seas and shifting sand. At first glance, the formation appears unmistakably architectural. It stretches roughly 150 meters in length and stands about 25 meters tall, an immense undersea presence that would rival some above-ground monuments. Smooth terraces, 90-degree corners, long corridors. Even what some divers refer to as a throne room emerges from the rock in defiance of natural disorder. In a world defined by nature's chaos, Yonaguni's symmetry feels like a challenge, a message deliberately carved into the ocean floor. It doesn't resemble the jagged randomness of coral reefs or the uneven scatter of tectonic debris. It looks like something purpose-built. To Japanese marine geologist Masaki Kimura, that message is crystal clear. Yonaguni was once dry land, and it was deliberately shaped or entirely constructed by ancient hands. For decades, Kimura has championed the theory that this submerged marvel represents the ruins of a forgotten city. A city that might predate written history, a city older than Egypt's pyramids, older even than Göbekli Tepe, perhaps older than civilization as we define it today. Kimura has devoted decades to the site, diving into its corridors, photographing its features, and creating intricate diagrams of its layout. According to him, this is no fluke of erosion. It's the lost work of an advanced prehistoric culture. He claims to have identified stairways, paved streets, gates, open plazas, ceremonial spaces, retaining walls, and even symbols carved into the stone that may represent early writing or ritual iconography. To Kimura, Yonaguni is not just evidence of early human engineering, it's a chapter of our story that's been violently erased by geological upheaval and time. But not everyone sees the monument through Kimura's eyes. The mainstream scientific community, particularly geologists from the West, approaches the structure with more skepticism and less wonder. They argue that the Yonaguni monument is a product of tectonic activity and natural erosion. The island sits atop a highly active fault zone, prone to earthquakes, seabed fractures, and underwater landslides. The region's sandstone, fine-grained, brittle, and sedimentary, naturally splits along horizontal and vertical planes. When subjected to pressure and shifting plates, it can create geometric forms that closely resemble artificial structures. In other words, what looks like the ruins of an ancient metropolis may simply be the work of nature, slowly etched by seismic activity, tidal currents, and gravity over tens of thousands of years. To bolster their case, skeptics highlight what isn't found at the site. There are no artifacts, no tools, ceramics, bones, or clearly human-crafted items. There's no archaeological debris typically associated with settlements. There are no carvings universally agreed to be man-made, no burial chambers, altars, or recognizable artistic flourishes, just the rock, its patterns suggestive but silent. And so, they argue, there is no cultural fingerprint to match the monument. No known people or civilization in prehistoric Japan capable of such construction has ever been recorded. Without that context, the site floats in limbo, provocative but unproven. To them, Yonaguni is a geological curiosity, not an archaeological revelation, an illusion conjured by coincidence. Yet the questions persist, because standing on Yonaguni's terraces, the doubts begin to dissolve, if only momentarily. Divers describe a strange feeling, an intuitive sense of purpose in the stone. The steps are uniform, the walls seem aligned. The symmetry isn't absolute, but it's compelling, enough to inspire belief. Some divers and independent researchers claim to have found statues or sculptures, weathered figures shaped like turtles, human heads, and mysterious geometric emblems. Others suggest that the monument connects with nearby shoreline ruins, reinforcing the idea of a broader ancient complex now mostly underwater. Kimura has pointed to what he believes are underwater roads connecting the site to nearby rock outcroppings. He argues these may have once been bridges or processional walkways leading to temples, observatories, or ceremonial halls. In his interpretation, Yonaguni wasn't just a city, it was a sacred place, a spiritual hub for a seafaring civilization that vanished before history began. If that's true, it leads to even deeper mysteries. Who were these people? How did they acquire the knowledge to construct something so vast and precise? And perhaps more pressing, what happened to them? Was Yonaguni swallowed slowly by the sea? Or was it lost in a sudden cataclysm, a tsunami, an earthquake, or the melting of the last ice age's glaciers? Some theorists tie Yonaguni to global flood myths, the great deluges that appear in nearly every ancient culture's legends, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical Noah to India's Manu. Perhaps Yonaguni was part of that shared ancestral trauma. If so, its submersion may not have been a local tragedy. It could be a global memory carved in stone. More conservative researchers remain unconvinced. They acknowledge the uniqueness of the site but warn against drawing grand conclusions from a lack of definitive evidence. They argue that the burden of proof lies with those making extraordinary claims. Until tangible artifacts are found, tools, graves, dwellings, Yonaguni cannot rewrite history, and yet, despite decades of debate, the site has never been systematically excavated. Political, logistical and financial hurdles have kept any comprehensive underwater archaeological mission at bay. So we are left with photographs, dive logs, sonar scans and anecdotal claims, and the monument itself, steadfast, immovable, silent. Whether a marvel of nature or a forgotten temple, the Yonaguni monument compels us to question what we know and what we think we know. It reminds us that sometimes truth lies in the spaces between certainty and speculation. In the end, the monument waits. Buried beneath Pacific waters, it watches the shifting currents and holds its secrets close. From the storm-lashed shores of Japan, our journey now drifts southwest, toward the ancient coasts of India, where submerged cities flicker just beneath the surface, beckoning with myths of forgotten empires and sunken splendour. Dwarka city of Krishna. Along the wind-lashed coast of Gujarat in northwestern India, there's a place where myth meets tide, a stretch of sea long steeped in epic lore. Ancient Sanskrit texts speak of a gleaming city built by a god, a kingdom of shimmering marble and golden spires, a sacred site touched by Krishna himself, beloved deity, avatar, warrior and guide. Its name was Dwarka. For centuries, most believed the city existed only in verse, a mythic stage for the Mahabharata's divine drama, more poetry than place. The story went that, after Krishna's departure from the world, the sea claimed his city, swallowing it whole in a single dramatic flood, a fitting end to a god's earthly home, transformed into a watery grave by the very elements he once commanded. But what if that wasn't just a metaphor? In the early 2000s, a series of underwater expeditions conducted by India's National Institute of Ocean Technology, NIOT, began probing the waters of the Gulf of Kambat, not far from present-day Dwarka. What they found stunned even the most cautious researchers. It wasn't just sonar blips or vague outlines, it was unmistakable geometry, patterns too symmetrical, edges too defined. Sonar scans revealed strange regularities on the seafloor, symmetrical patterns, stone walls, what appeared to be rectangular platforms, 20 to 40 meters beneath the waves. Divers recovered artifacts, carved tools, ceramic fragments, beads and stone anchors. Not debris, not random scatter. These objects seemed to tell a story, not in language but in form and context. One diver described walking along what felt like a stone road, flat blocks fitted together, lining the seafloor like the foundation of something long buried. Another spoke of carved steps vanishing into silt as though they had once led somewhere sacred, and then simply stopped. A third claimed to see circular depressions that resembled wells or ritual basins, and upright stones that may once have marked ceremonial spaces. The biggest surprise came from a piece of wood found embedded in the sediment near the site. Radiocarbon dating suggested it was over 9,000 years old, a staggering age that places it deep in the Neolithic, long before the rise of any known Indian civilization. It ignited the imagination of those who believed in the city's ancient origins. If that date holds, it changes everything. Such a timeline predates not just Krishna's mythic era, but most urban settlements we currently know. Long before the pyramids, before Mesopotamia, before writing itself, Dwarka, if that's what it was, might be one of humanity's oldest known cities to vanish beneath the sea. It could signify a lost chapter of civilization that predates history by thousands of years. Naturally, not everyone is convinced. Skeptics argue that much of the evidence is inconclusive. The Gulf's seabed is constantly shifting. Sediment, currents, and river runoff obscure clarity. Some suggest the structures might be geological, others claim the artifacts could have drifted from elsewhere, deposited by rivers or storms rather than buried remnants of a city. But it's hard to ignore the volume and the pattern. Descriptions from the Mahabharata match the layout of submerged ruins. The texts even mention the city being built on land reclaimed from the sea, only to be taken back by the ocean after Krishna's death. Is one of those rare cases where legend and sonar scan seem to whisper the same thing. The correlation is not proof, but it is haunting. What makes Dwarka extraordinary isn't just the ruins, it's the continuity of memory. Unlike Atlantis, Dwarka was never lost in location, only in time. It was always there, in ritual, in scripture, in story, passed from verse to verse until one day divers found shapes in the water that echoed those ancient lines. Its name remained on the tongues of priests, woven into prayers, whispered on the breeze blowing across temple flags. To Hindus, Dwarka is not just a mythic past, it's a living presence. Pilgrims still visit the modern temple town bearing the same name. Ceremonies still invoke Krishna's oceanic abode. Priests chant mantras remembering the divine city while stone lingams and brass idols stand above what could be the buried foundations of another age. If the city did exist as the texts describe, then we're not just dealing with myth, we're touching the edge of something more profound. Cultural memory stretching across millennia, preserved not in textbooks but in belief. Oral tradition as historical container, poetry as preservation. This notion, legends as vessels of truth, challenges our assumptions. Western scholarship often separates history from myth, fact from fable, but Dwarka suggests a bridge between the two. That perhaps some myths are echoes, not inventions, refractions of memory shaped by time, not fantasy. The case for ancient Dwarka isn't closed. Niot's findings were never subjected to extensive international peer review. Further expeditions stalled. Political and religious sensitivities complicated progress. Cultural pride and academic caution collided, leaving the truth suspended somewhere in the depths. Still, the evidence remains. Artifacts catalogued, structures mapped, stories told, and a city whispered through coral and tide, and the ocean waits. Dwarka may be a beginning, a doorway into a deeper past, one that calls into question what we think we know about where civilization began and when. If even a portion of what's been found is accurate, it will force a reimagining of how and where humankind first built the cities that would become our global legacy. From Gujarat's sacred coast, we now travel far north into Canada's frozen interior, where another underwater puzzle emerges. This time is not a sunken city, but a mysterious circle of stones arranged deep beneath a lake, far from where anyone expected. Submerged megaliths of Lake MacDonald, Canada. Canada is not the first place most people associate with ancient megaliths. It's a land of vast silence, of dense forests, jagged coastlines, and glacial valleys that seem untouched by time. Its early story, shaped by retreating ice and migrating wildlife, feels more natural than cultural. The human presence here has always seemed quiet, dwarfed by the majesty of the land. Preservation is tricky. The harsh winters, heavy snowmelt and isolation tend to erase what people leave behind. Anything ancient has to survive not just time but the climate. And yet, beneath the cold, dark waters of Lake MacDonald in British Columbia, something unexpected waits. A circle of stones, not the remains of a cabin or campsite, but something far older and infinitely stranger. Not pebbles or scattered boulders, but large, upright monoliths. Each stands between 1 and 2 meters tall, worn and heavy, resting at a depth of about 12 meters on a flat, silty lake bed. They're not random. They form a ring, wide, spacious, with some stones slightly tilted inward, almost leaning toward a common center. One features a smaller, flat-topped rock perched atop it, as though marking a position or a purpose. Some are buried deeper than others, as if time itself pressed them into the earth. The site wasn't always submerged. Thousands of years ago, this was dry ground, a low-lying valley carved by glaciers and laced with rivers. It might have been a clearing surrounded by trees, maybe even a gathering place. As the Ice Age ended and meltwater filled the basin, lakes formed, growing year by year. Slowly, steadily, the water rose, flooding everything. Trees, trails, and perhaps a circle of stones placed by human hands. The lake claimed them, and they sank into obscurity. The formation was discovered not by archaeologists, but by biologists. In the early 2000s, a research team from a Canadian university was conducting sonar scans to track fish movement and water temperature. Their equipment returned something odd, an organized cluster of vertical shapes too symmetrical to ignore. Curious, they sent down divers to investigate. They didn't expect what they found. What they found was eerie and beautiful. Massive stones rising from the sediment in a perfect arc. No cliffs nearby, no sign of landslides, just the ring. Quiet, deliberate, and alone. It didn't look like something nature just threw together. The divers spoke of the experience with reverence. Swimming through the circle felt less like exploration and more like intrusion. There was no coral, no fish schools, just cold, silty darkness, and the slow revelation of shape. One diver said it felt like standing in a forgotten church. Another described it as an altar with no ceremony left. A few felt disoriented, claiming the space gave them a strange sense of stillness, as though time itself paused. No tools were found, no bones, no pottery, just the stones. That absence complicates everything. It gives room for wonder, but no anchor of certainty. Without the usual markers of human presence, scholars can only speculate. Without artifacts or organic remains, dating the structure becomes guesswork. Some experts place it at 5,000 years old. Others argue for 10,000, possibly older, if it predates the lake's formation altogether. That would make it older than any known habitation in Western Canada, older than Stonehenge, possibly older than Göbekli Tepe. So who built it? No definitive answer. Local First Nations have passed down oral histories for generations. Stories of landscapes shifting, sacred spaces lost to rising waters. Some tales speak of watching stones, arranged to track the sky or call the winds. One legend tells of spirits who place stones as guardians of balance between land and water. But these are mythic memories, not blueprints. They hint at something, but they don't explain it. The site has never been fully excavated, partly due to its remoteness, partly out of respect, and partly because, in the absence of proof, any conclusion remains a guess. What would be gained by disturbing something that has rested untouched for millennia? What if the disturbance risks erasing something more profound than data? Still, the mystery lingers. Some researchers suggest it could have marked solstices or celestial alignments. Others propose seasonal rituals, gatherings, burials, offerings to unseen forces. A few imagine it as a kind of prehistoric calendar, its stones aligned with stars that no longer shine in the same place. Perhaps it was both spiritual and functional, a sacred site that marked time, season, and sky. And some simply shrug. Maybe it's just a coincidence, a trick of geology, but even skeptics admit coincidences don't usually come in circles, perfectly spaced, hidden beneath a lake, but it doesn't feel like a coincidence. There's something haunting about the arrangement, how clean it is, how empty the surrounding lakebed remains, as if the stones were meant to stand apart. But they don't appear broken or tumbled, they weren't rolled by glaciers, they were placed, which means someone placed them, and then the water came, quietly, slowly, and whatever meaning the stones once held was pulled beneath the surface, sealed under a blanket of silt and time. Now they just sit, waiting, watching, as if remembering. And perhaps that's the most human part of the mystery. Not what we know, but what we feel. That deep instinctive sense that someone was here before us, that they looked at the sky, marked the days, honoured something sacred, and that all of it, the knowledge, the ritual, the reason, was swept away not by war or fire, but by the patient rising sea. From Lake MacDonald to Bimini Road, from Dwarka to Yonaguni, these places don't give us certainty. They don't shout, they whisper. They remind us that history is not always preserved in stone walls or written scrolls. Sometimes it's submerged, quietly, invisibly, and completely. And if we're lucky, we find a piece of it before it disappears again. Next, we surface into a broader question, one that links these anomalies across oceans and ages. What does it mean when so many cultures remember lost lands? When memory survives long after the ruins are gone? The enigma of Sacsayhuaman, Peru. High in the Andes of Peru, more than 12,000 feet above sea level, lies a wall that doesn't look like much from a distance. Just a dark outline along the hills above Cusco, the once mighty capital of the Incan Empire. But take a few steps closer, and the ordinary dissolves into something extraordinary. This isn't a wall, it's a marvel. Massive stone blocks, some as heavy as 125 tons, rise in a zigzag formation along the hillside. Others weigh as much as a loaded semi-truck, and yet they don't sit haphazardly, stacked like fieldstones or piled like ruins. These boulders fit together with astonishing precision, interlocked like 3D puzzle pieces, curved and notched, carved and contoured. Each stone seems custom-shaped to cradle the ones beside it, locked so tightly that not even a razor blade can slip between them. This is Sacsayhuaman, and to this day it remains one of the greatest engineering enigmas of the ancient world. The walls are polygonal, some stones with up to a dozen faces, each one carefully adjusted to match its neighbours. There's no mortar, no filler, just seamless stone sculpted and placed with a level of precision rarely matched even by modern standards. But this isn't just about craftsmanship, it's about resilience. Sacsayhuaman's walls lean slightly inward, forming a natural brace against the tremors that frequently rock the region. Earthquakes that have leveled buildings in nearby Cusco haven't so much as nudged these ancient stones. They've stood for centuries, some say longer, resisting time, nature, and the erosion of history. And that's where the mystery deepens. Officially, the Inca are credited with the site's construction. Their empire stretched thousands of miles across South America, and they were skilled builders. But the Inca left no blueprints, no stone-cutting manuals, no written record of how Sacsayhuaman was made. Their histories were oral, passed down in myths and memory. And some of those memories say the same thing. The Inca didn't build the largest stones, they inherited them. This idea that Sacsayhuaman might be a legacy site built in layers over generations or even civilizations has gained quiet traction. Spanish chroniclers in the 16th century reported that when they asked the Inca how such massive stones had been placed, they were told the work had been done by an earlier person, a forgotten culture, one that vanished long before the Spanish arrived, leaving behind only stone. That's not unusual in the Andes. Across the region, megalithic sites appear where no full civilization is recorded, as if pieces of the past have been torn from the timeline, leaving just their stone fingerprints behind. Even if the Inca were responsible, the how remains elusive. They had no wheels, no steel tools, no draft animals suited for hauling hundreds of tons, and yet the stones at Sacsayhuaman didn't just move, they moved from quarries kilometers away, through mountainous terrain with no clear roads or ramps preserved. Once on site, they were shaped, not roughly but elegantly, smooth curves, intricate joints, perfectly matched seams. One theory holds that stones were painstakingly shaped with hammerstones, hard basalt used to chip away at the andesite for weeks or months. Another proposes an ancient, now lost chemical method to soften stone surfaces, effectively melting them just enough to mould and fit. But no such tools or residues have ever been found. No conclusive method has been demonstrated. And then there's the logistics. It's one thing to shape a 10-ton block, it's another to haul it uphill, pivot it around tight mountain passes, and set it into place with millimetre-level accuracy. Now repeat that. Dozens of times, hundreds, without machinery, without cranes, without visible infrastructure. Sacsayhuaman isn't just one wall, it's an entire complex. In its prime, the site may have included towers, reservoirs, ceremonial plazas and multi-story buildings. Spanish records describe a city of grandeur, rivaling the great temples of Europe. Much of it was later dismantled, the stones hauled away to build colonial Cusco. What remains are the bones, the foundations, the lower walls, the quiet survivors of conquest. And yet even in ruins, the sight astounds. Place your hand on the stone and you feel it, something more than age. You feel intention. Each block is unique, shaped not to fit a mould but to fit one another. Some corners are rounded, others carved concave, fitting seamlessly into adjacent convex cuts. It's not masonry, it's sculpture on a scale rarely attempted, let alone achieved. No modern reconstruction effort using the same techniques as match Sacsayhuaman's precision. Attempts with modern tools still fall short. There is no inscription here, no carved dedication, no ego stamped into the granite. Just silence, a mystery in stone. Was it a fortress, a religious sanctuary, a celestial observatory? Some scholars suggest the zigzag pattern of the walls mimics lightning, a symbol of power in Andean cosmology. Others believe it reflects the teeth of the sacred puma, whose body is said to have shaped the layout of ancient Cusco. From the air, the site does resemble the head of a jagged feline. But even that is interpretation. What we're left with is awe and unanswered questions. Even the name, Sacsayhuaman, remains ambiguous. While recorded in Spanish chronicles, whether it was the Inca's original name or inherited from an older culture is unclear. Translations vary from satisfied falcon to speckled head. Like the stones themselves, the name resists clarity. But this much we know. Someone built a structure so resilient, so refined, and so complex that it has outlived empires, outlasted earthquakes, and outwitted time, without writing, without wheels, without cranes, just knowledge, ingenuity, and hands that shaped stone like clay. It's not strange because it's impossible. It's strange because it's deeply, profoundly human, yet still beyond what we think early humans could do. From these mountaintop walls, our journey continues east, across Lake Titicaca, where one of Sacsayhuaman's only true rivals sits in silence. There, at Pumapunku, the stones do something different. They don't just fit, they interlock like they were machined. Pumapunku, where stones look machine-made. At nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, the Bolivian Altiplano doesn't welcome you, it confronts you. The air is razor-thin, the sun unfiltered, the wind relentless. There are no dense forests, no echoing rivers, just raw earth and sky, and nestled near the southeastern shore of Lake Titicaca, the crumbled remnants of something inexplicable. This is Pumapunku. The name means door of the puma, but today there's no door, no gate, no towering temple, just a scattering of immense stones strewn across the high plains like the aftermath of a cosmic tantrum. At first glance, the site looks like a ruin mid-collapse, abandoned, confused, maybe even unimportant. But then you look closer, and the illusion fractures. These stones aren't just broken, they're engineered. Some are granite, others are andesite, a dense volcanic rock that's among the hardest on Earth. These aren't rocks you casually shape with copper tools or stone hammers. They're defiant, resistant, and yet they have been shaped, with a precision that modern engineers still struggle to explain. Flat planes, perfect right angles, uniform channels cut clean through the stone, not ragged, not guesswork, machine flat. Some blocks feature beveled edges and T-shaped grooves. Others have internal slots that resemble assembly points, like ancient stone brackets. There are boreholes, circular, consistent, seemingly drilled, and most famously the H-blocks, nearly identical megaliths shaped into a capital H with recessed niches and interlocking joints, spaced with uncanny regularity. They look manufactured, not carved, not sculpted, manufactured. According to archaeology textbooks, these were made by the Tiwanaku people, an advanced civilization that flourished from roughly 500 to 1000 CE. They were astronomers, traders, farmers, builders, but they didn't have writing, no blueprints, no cranes, no steel, no wheels, no pulleys, and yet somehow they built this. How? Theories abound. Some suggest the Tiwanaku used stone tools, hammering harder basalt against andesite over months or years. Others propose sand abrasion, water erosion, or even plant-based acids capable of softening stone, though no such chemical evidence has ever been found. But let's say they did manage to carve the blocks. What about moving them? Some stones at Pumapunku weigh over 130 tons. That's heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 757. The nearest known quarry lies more than 50 kilometers away, across rugged, hilly terrain. There were no draft animals strong enough, no cart system, no infrastructure as far as we know, for moving that kind of load, and yet the stones are here, arranged, cut, positioned. Then there's the layout. While much of Pumapunku lies in ruins, toppled, disassembled, there are strong indications that the site once followed a deliberate architectural plan. The blocks were part of a platform, possibly a pyramid or a ritual complex. Some believe the layout aligned with solstices or celestial events. Others suspect the complex served a ceremonial function, possibly connected to Lake Titicaca, considered sacred in both Tiwanaku and Inca mythology. And then, the work stopped. Some stones appear abandoned mid-carving, others lie broken, as if a sudden disaster, earthquake, flood, or political collapse froze the project in place. What was meant to be finished was never completed. What could have been monumental was left fragmented. So we're left with fragments too. The Tiwanaku didn't etch their achievements into stone. They left no inscriptions, no step-by-step instructions, no origin myth for Pumapunku's construction, just geometry and silence. That silence is loud. Engineers who've studied the H-blocks have compared their uniformity to modern prefabrication techniques. Masons speak of impossibly clean cuts. Attempts to replicate the work with period-accurate tools often fall short, not just in precision, but in time. It would take years to carve just one block using hammerstones and abrasion. Multiply that by dozens, and the logistics become staggering. This is not to say the Tiwanaku weren't capable, far from it, But Pumapunku suggests a kind of knowledge, technical, material, and logistical, that feels out of sync with the tools we know they had. So what happened? Some suggest we're missing an entire layer of history, a forgotten technique or transmission of knowledge lost in time. Others believe the site itself is older than the Tiwanaku, perhaps inherited, much like the megaliths of Sacsayhuaman in Peru. The truth is, we don't know. And perhaps that's the most human part of this story. Not the mystery itself, but the humility it demands. Pumapunku asks us to consider a world where mastery didn't require metal or machines, where skill lived in the hands of artisans who worked by memory and touch, not manuals, where a technique could thrive, evolve, and disappear without ever being written down. It asks us to imagine that for some chapters of history, the knowledge wasn't lost, it was simply never recorded. When you stand among the ruins, the cold wind wrapping around you, it's hard not to feel it, that strange pressure in the air, not from altitude, but from absence, an absence of answers, an absence of explanation, and yet a presence too, a presence of something built with care, with vision, with purpose. Because these aren't the random leftovers of the primitive people, they're deliberate, precise, unfinished, and they remain one of the most humbling puzzles ever carved into stone. From these windswept blocks, we head next to Lebanon, to the ancient Roman city of Baalbek, where the largest stones ever used in human construction still lie in place, unmoved, and almost unmovable. Baalbek, the Trilithon stones, in the Bekaa Valley of eastern Lebanon, where vineyards stretch under an unrelenting sun and hills roll towards Syria's distant haze, there is a place where stone and silence converge. A place where the ancient world didn't just build upward, it rooted something immovable into the earth. This is Baalbek, once a Phoenician city, then a Greek sanctuary, and finally a Roman stronghold. Baalbek today is most famously crowned by the towering columns of the Temple of Jupiter, among the tallest ever constructed by Rome's imperial hand. The scale is overwhelming, the ambition unmistakable. But look below. Beneath the temple lies something older, stranger, and heavier than anything most modern minds expect to find in antiquity. 3 stones, 1 platform, known collectively as the Trilithon. Each stone measures roughly 19 meters in length, 4 meters high, and 3.6 meters wide. Their weight? Estimated between 800 and 900 tons each, carved from local limestone and laid into a foundation wall with such surgical precision that the gaps between them are virtually non-existent. Standing before them is not like seeing architecture. It's like witnessing a geological impossibility turned intentional. To understand just how large these blocks are, consider this. The Statue of Liberty, base and all, weighs around 225 tons. These stones are nearly 4 times that. Not lying in a quarry, not half finished, but transported, lifted, and locked into place. The quarry they came from still exists, less than a kilometre away. There, half buried in ancient soil, lies the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a 1,000-ton colossus, never fully extracted. And more recently, an even larger monolith, the Forgotten Stone, was discovered nearby, weighing an estimated 1,650 tons. But those stones remain still. The Trilithon does not. That difference matters. Because while many civilizations have quarried stone, very few have moved it, and no known culture, not Rome, not Egypt, not Babylon, used blocks of this size in finished structural construction. So who moved them? And more importantly, how? Mainstream theories offer possible methods. Massive earthen ramps, thousands of labourers pulling ropes over lubricated logs, intricate sled systems guided across smoothed paths. Some propose that the stones were placed before the surrounding platform was built up, an early set of blocks, around which the rest of the temple was later constructed. But even these explanations strain under the weight of the logistics. Moving a 900-ton block just 1 metre is a feat of Herculean proportions. To lift it nearly 20 feet off the ground and set it perfectly level? That's something else. And here's the deeper mystery. This was not typical Roman practice. The Romans, masters of arch and dome, concrete and modular construction, built big, but not like this. Across their empire, they preferred manageable blocks, scalable materials, and repeatable design. Even in monumental works like the Colosseum or Pantheon, their stones are dwarfed by the Trilithon. Which begs the uncomfortable question, did the Romans build the foundation, or did they build on it? there's growing evidence to suggest the latter. Several features of the platform, its weathering, construction style, and the precise fit of its largest stones appear distinct from the Roman temple that now rests above it. This has led some scholars to propose that Baalbek was a sacred site long before Rome arrived, that what we call Roman might simply be Roman renovation, a new temple built atop an older mystery. In this view, the Trilithon may be a relic of an earlier, pre-Roman culture, a civilization with the knowledge, time, and determination to move the immovable, and the reasons for doing so lost to history. Because here's the haunting part. There are no records, no inscriptions, no tools left behind, no name carved into stone. Just the blocks themselves, massive, silent, exact. Some fringe theories go further, suggesting advanced ancient technologies or lost global cultures or even extraterrestrial help. But perhaps the truth is stranger because it's human. Maybe thousands of years ago there existed a knowledge base so specialized, so finely honed over generations, that it enabled feats we no longer understand. A slow craft, passed down by demonstration rather than writing, a mastery of material and movement that left no blueprints, just results. And then it ended. War, plague, climate, collapse. Whatever the reason, the culture vanished, and with it the knowledge. The Trilithon is what remains, a structure not only built but built to endure, and perhaps to speak quietly across time. When you stand beneath those stones, the weight is not just physical, it's historical, psychological. It presses not on your chest, but on your certainty. Because these are not just ruins, they are reminders. That we don't know everything, that progress isn't always linear, and that some chapters of human history may lie not ahead of us, but behind, buried beneath our assumptions. From the immovable blocks of Baalbek, we now travel east to a different kind of engineering marvel, where instead of raising stones skyward, builders carve downward, into living rock, into a mountainside, into a temple that may be the single largest monolithic sculpture ever attempted. Kailasa, India's monolithic masterpiece. In western India, not far from the modern city of Aurangabad, there exists something so extraordinary, so seemingly impossible, that it defies traditional explanations. At first glance, it appears to be a typical rock structure nestled into the rugged Deccan landscape. But then the detail emerges, then the scale, then the impossibility of it all. Because this is not just a temple, it is a mountain, hollowed out, shaped, and transformed by human hands into one of the largest and most enigmatic pieces of monolithic architecture the world has ever known. It was not built, it was not assembled, it was revealed. This is the Kailasa temple. Carved entirely from a single mountain of basalt, it is part of the Ellora Caves, a complex of 34 rock-cut monasteries and temples stretching over 2 kilometers, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that reflects 3 major religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. But Kailasa is the crown jewel, a structure so vast, so complex, and so exquisitely detailed that it seems as though it should not exist, and yet it does. The temple was excavated vertically from the top down rather than built from the ground up. This alone sets it apart from almost every other structure of its kind. There was no scaffolding, no brickwork, no layering of stone upon stone. Every inch was carved out from solid rock. Imagine the thought process. You don't add, you subtract. Every decision is final. One misstep and the entire structure would be compromised. Every angle, every relief, every stairwell had to be visualized before the first chisel struck. And the result is breathtaking. The central courtyard stretches over 80 meters in length and nearly 50 meters in width. Towering columns and detailed balconies surround a shrine, flanked by subsidiary temples and walkways. Stairs wind through tunnels of stone. Statues of gods, animals, and mythical beings seem to emerge from the walls, as if born from the rock itself. And it was all carved from a single piece of stone. Not just the main temple, but the bridges, corridors, pavilions, and colonnades. Every pillar, every image, every story frozen in time. Experts estimate that between 400,000 and 500,000 tons of stone were removed in the process. That's equivalent to the weight of 100,000 elephants, dug out not with explosives or cranes, but with hammers and chisels, with patience, with intention, with nothing more than human endurance and shared purpose. The temple is traditionally dated to the 8th century CE, commissioned during the reign of Krishna I of the Rashtrakuta dynasty. Some historical sources and regional inscriptions support this, though the details remain hazy. According to local legend and some interpretations of ancient texts, the entire structure may have been completed in just 18 years. If that timeline is accurate, and there is debate about this, it implies that more than 60 tons of stone were removed every single day. But removal was only the beginning. The stone wasn't just taken out, it was shaped, smoothed, sculpted. Every surface had to be considered, every figure is carefully designed. This wasn't a functional excavation, it was art, mythology rendered in stone, a physical expression of the divine order. And this wasn't a soft stone, this was basalt, one of the hardest volcanic rocks on Earth. Even today, modern tools struggle with it. Basalt resists cutting, resists chipping, yet the artisans at Kailasa managed to shape it into impossibly delicate reliefs. Thin lines, curving forms, expressive faces, and scenes dense with narrative. What is perhaps even more astonishing is the lack of error. Not one overcut, not one collapsed column. The symmetry is astonishing. Even as the complex winds and stretches in every direction, there is balance. The geometry holds. There are no surviving blueprints, no master plans, no scrolls detailing the layout, no diaries from architects or engineers, and yet the temple stands, not just intact but transcendent. How was it organized? Some researchers suggest miniature clay models were used and scaled using plumb lines and grid systems. Others propose that oral traditions guided the effort, that the knowledge resided in the minds and hands of the craftsmen. But we don't know. That is perhaps the most haunting part of Kailasa, its silence. The temple speaks through its form, but not through words. Its creators are unnamed, its methods undocumented. And so we are left with a structure that is perfect in execution but mysterious in origin. But Kailasa is not just an engineering puzzle, it is a symbolic space, a sacred geography in stone. Dedicated to Lord Shiva, the destroyer and transformer of the Hindu Trinity, the temple is named after Mount Kailash, his mythical abode in the Himalayas. The structure isn't merely a shrine, it is a symbolic reconstruction of the universe. The central spire represents Mount Meru, the cosmic axis. The sanctum symbolizes Shiva's meditative soul. The surrounding figures and carvings trace the narrative arc of Hindu cosmology, avatars of Vishnu, battles with demons, divine processions. Every figure, every corner echoes a spiritual truth. The intention was not just to create a place for prayer, it was to transform. To enter Kailasa was to step outside of time, to ascend inward. The design guides the eye upward, the feet forward, the soul inward. Sunlight filters through stone windows, casting beams across carved floors. The acoustics amplify chants into reverberating waves. In the stillness, one can almost feel the pulse of divinity. Artisans carved with such precision that the folds in a dancer's skirt remain etched 1,200 years later. Faces hold expression. Lions seem mid-motion. Deities gaze back at you. One panel shows Ravana shaking Mount Kailash in anger. Another shows Vishnu in his boar form rescuing the earth. Every wall is a library, every sculpture a sermon. And still the questions remain. How did they manage weight distribution as they carved downward? How did they know where to stop? Where did the debris go? How many lives were spent here? How many names are now lost? We know the name of the king who commissioned it, but we do not know the names of those who realized his vision. The master sculptors, the planners, the laborers, the ones who woke before dawn and gave decades of their lives to stone. Their fingerprints remain in every groove, but their names have been erased by time. To some, Kailasa is simply an architectural wonder, proof of what focused labor and vision can achieve. To others, it is a sacred geometry, a cosmic diagram rendered in 3 dimensions, a mandala, a map of consciousness, a place where the material and the metaphysical are indistinguishable. And then there are those who see it as a message, not from the gods but from the builders, a message that says, this is what humans can do. This is what we once were, capable not just of survival, but of transcendence, of creating the sublime from stone. And if this was possible in the 8th century, with iron chisels, no power tools, and memory for measurement, what else was possible? What else have we forgotten? What traditions died when the empires fell? What skills burned with the libraries? Kailasa does not ask you to suspend disbelief. It does not demand faith. it simply stands, a carved testament to a lost mastery. From here, from this towering silence, we descend into the soft volcanic soil of Cappadocia, where another world was carved not up, but down into the earth itself. Cappadocia, the cities beneath the earth. In the heart of central Turkey lies a landscape that feels like it belongs to another world. This is Cappadocia, a place where the wind has sculpted stone into surreal shapes, where erosion has created valleys like labyrinths, and where the sky touches towers of soft volcanic ash that rise like ghosts from the ground. Locals call them fairy chimneys. For centuries, people carved their homes into these spires. They built churches, monasteries, and entire villages into the rock. Walls became windows, mountains became sanctuaries, but as remarkable as these carved dwellings are, they're only the beginning. Because the true marvel of Cappadocia doesn't stand above the earth, it lies beneath it. Hidden beneath this already surreal terrain is a vast network of underground cities, layered, engineered, and complex. These aren't crude hideouts or natural caves. They're human-made environments, meticulously carved from the bedrock, designed for long-term survival, complete with sleeping quarters, kitchens, wineries, stables, schools, communal halls, and sacred chapels. Each level of these subterranean cities includes advanced air shafts that still function today, pulling cool, dry air through tunnels that twist and dive into darkness. Wells reach deep aquifers. Waste is managed through dedicated channels. Passages are guarded by circular stone doors, massive millstone-like barriers that roll into place to seal entire levels off in seconds. And these cities weren't built. They were sculpted, hollowed out floor by floor from living stone. In 1963, in the town of Derinkuyu, a man renovating his basement broke through a wall and stumbled into a hidden chamber. Then another, then a narrow tunnel. He'd uncovered something vast. Derinkuyu would become the largest and most studied underground city in Cappadocia. Today it descends more than 18 levels into the earth. Archaeologists estimate it could have housed over 20,000 people, along with livestock, food stores, and water reserves. The deeper you go, the more intricate it becomes. Worship spaces, crosshatch ventilation systems, secret passages and trapdoors. But Derinkuyu is not unique. Over the years, dozens of other underground cities have been found scattered across Cappadocia. Some large, some small, many connected by long, narrow tunnels that run for kilometers beneath the surface. These weren't isolated refuges. They were part of a network, an entire parallel world beneath the rock. Walking these tunnels today is a disorienting experience. Even with modern lighting and signs, the space closes in. Ceilings drop, walls narrow, the rock is cool and quiet, almost whispering with every echoing footstep. And then, suddenly, you emerge into a chamber blackened by ancient fires, with soot still clinging to ceilings carved centuries ago. A kitchen, a chapel, a sleeping room with niches where oil lamps once burned. The craftsmanship is pragmatic yet deliberate. These aren't signs of temporary flight. They suggest endurance. Families living underground for not days, not weeks, but months, entire seasons, generations. So who built them? Ask 10 scholars, you'll get 10 answers. The problem is, you can't carbon date carved rock. There's no organic material to test. No inscriptions offering clear timestamps. Only the shape of the rooms, the tools marks in the stone, and the echo of intent. Some scholars trace the earliest levels back to the Hittite Empire, around 1800 BCE. Others argue for the 8th century BCE during the Phrygian period, when waves of invasion and political unrest may have forced people underground. By the early Christian era, the cities had become sanctuaries. Monks, priests, and early Christian communities fled Roman and later Arab persecution. Carved crosses and rudimentary altars still line the chapel walls. Here's the question: did those Christians build the cities? Or did they move into them? Because some of the deepest levels, the ones with the most complex defences, don't match the later Christian architecture. They're older, more labyrinthine, less devotional, more tactical, with dead-end passages, false tunnels, vertical shafts designed as escape chutes, and stone barriers ready to lock intruders inside. Whoever built those levels wasn't hiding from theology. They were preparing for a siege. So who were they? What threat loomed large enough to drive an entire population underground? What historical trauma or memory led to this much preparation? The answers are missing, lost to the dust and silence of time. Perhaps it was climate change. Perhaps war. Perhaps something we can't imagine. But what remains is this. Someone had the foresight, the coordination, and the discipline to carve entire civilizations beneath their feet, and then they vanished. Cappadocia's underground cities are not ruins in the conventional sense. They didn't collapse. They were abandoned quietly and almost entirely. No grand fall, no visible destruction, just a soft retreat into legend. Today, tourists descend into Derinkuyu with flashlights and tour guides. They marvel at the ingenuity, they whisper in the tunnels, but very few realize what these places represent. Not just architecture, not just defense, but memory. A memory so deep it was carved into the earth itself. From Cappadocia, we continue our journey through humanity's hidden past, to a far older mystery in Indonesia, where a massive stepped pyramid, long buried beneath jungle soil, may be rewriting the timeline of human civilization. The unfinished obelisk of Aswan, Egypt. From the hidden cities beneath Turkey, we journey now to Egypt, where another mystery lies not beneath the earth, but out in the open, sunlit, vast, and oddly quiet. It rests not at the center of a temple, but at the edge of a quarry. A place meant for beginnings, but this particular beginning never found its end. Here, carved from a single mass of red granite, lies a monument that was never completed. It isn't standing, it isn't broken, it isn't even moved. It's simply there, immense, still attached to the bedrock, waiting. Measuring over 40 meters in length and weighing an estimated 1,200 tons, it is the largest obelisk ever attempted in human history, larger than any known obelisk that was actually erected in ancient Egypt, and yet most people have never heard of it. The site lies in a granite quarry in Aswan, a city steeped in ancient tradition, perched along the southern reaches of the Nile. The same quarry gave rise to many of the red granite pillars, statues and temple blocks that now line Egypt's sacred sites. Obelisks from here were floated north on barges, standing tall in the temples of Karnak and Luxor. But this one, known simply as the unfinished obelisk, was left behind. A deep crack formed in its base during the late stages of carving, rendering it unstable, useless. And so, after what may have been years of work, the craftsmen laid down their tools and left. What they left behind is no less valuable than the completed monuments. In fact, to archaeologists, engineers, and historians, it may be even more precious. Because it offers something few other ancient sites do, a direct physical look at the process, not the finished product, but the making of it. Here we see how massive granite was worked using surprisingly simple tools, rounded balls of dolerite, a rock harder than granite, used as hammers. We see the long, smooth channels the workers carved around the obelisk's edges, laboriously separating it from the living rock. We see the shallow gouges, the scoop marks from pounding and pounding and pounding again, evidence of relentless, repetitive labour. No shortcuts, no magic, just endurance and knowledge passed down over centuries. Standing beside it, you're struck not just by the size of the stone, but by the scale of the effort, the precision required to keep the obelisk aligned, the teamwork it would have taken to coordinate dozens, maybe hundreds of labourers in confined trenches, all carving in unison, the sheer weight of time embedded in the work. And that was just phase one. Once cut, the real challenge would begin, extracting it completely, hauling it to the Nile, floating it on a specially constructed barge, then transporting it miles north to be raised upright. There is no hard evidence of how they planned to do this. No preserved blueprint, just theories. Some suggest a ramping system made from mud brick and sand, gradually built up beneath the stone and cleared away as it was lifted. Others envision teams of oxen and massive sleds, lubricated with water or animal fat to reduce friction. There are diagrams of rafts the width of modern tennis courts, reinforced to handle the pressure of 1,200 tons. But all of this, every theory, is speculation. Because this obelisk was never moved, the attempt was halted, the stone cracked, and the monument remained behind like an idea frozen in its moment of collapse. And yet, for all that, it still teaches. The unfinished obelisk tells us more about ancient Egyptian stonework than almost any completed structure ever could. Most monuments hide their scars beneath polish. Their perfection conceals the tools, the errors, the trial and failure. But this stone is raw, honest, and vast. It shows us what was involved, not just technically, but humanly. The sweat, the coordination, the danger. Imagine standing in that trench, swinging a dolerite hammer for hours, breathing in fine granite dust, every strike an act of trust in the men working beside you. One mistake and the stone could fracture. One miscalculation and the alignment would fail. It was construction done blind, downward and inward, with no second chances, and in the end the stone cracked anyway. Whether from stress or from a hidden fault, or from the relentless pressure of its own ambition, we may never know. But something gave out. When that happened, the work stopped. The noise faded, the workers left. No record was made, no inscription, no lament. They moved on to other stones, other temples, and left this one half-born, half-forgotten. A monument not to a god or a king or a battle, but to the limits of human endurance, and to its reach. Because make no mistake, this was a reach, an act of architectural boldness. Not just to carve a bigger obelisk than any ever made, but to do so as a single seamless piece, to outmatch all previous monuments, to aim for something that even today we might struggle to replicate. Think of what it would take to carve this with modern tools. To quarry a 200-ton monolith, transport it and raise it vertically without shattering it. We could do it, but with cranes, reinforced steel cables, hydraulic lifting systems, teams of engineers, and computer simulations. The ancient Egyptians did it with hand tools, rope, and knowledge passed from one generation to the next. And that raises another question. Did they know it might fail? Did they try anyway? Or had they done something like this before, successfully on a smaller scale? We don't know. No similar-sized obelisk exists. This was not only the largest attempted, it may have been the first of its size, an experiment, a gamble. Perhaps one designed to honour a ruler whose name we no longer know, or perhaps to crown a temple whose foundations no longer stand. Whatever its purpose, the ambition behind it remains humbling. The kind of ambition that doesn't just want to honour the gods, it wants to reach them. That doesn't just want to make something beautiful, it wants to make something eternal. And even in failure, that intention survives. The stone was never raised, but the effort to raise it was immortalised in the marks left behind. And those marks still speak. They say, we tried. They say, we dared. They say, we pushed ourselves to the limit, not to survive, but to create something no one else would even attempt. And in a way, that might be more powerful than success. Today, the unfinished obelisk lies in the sun. Birds nest in the quarry walls. Tourists walk along wooden pathways built beside it. But the stone hasn't moved. It lies just as it was left, monumental and silent. And in its silence, it reminds us that history is not only written by what was completed, it's also whispered by what was abandoned. That the incomplete has its own kind of glory. Sometimes, the things that didn't quite work out still change the world, because they show us where the edge was, and they show us who had the courage to go there. The Piri Reis map, a cartographer who knew too much. In 1929, inside the dusty archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a group of historians sorting through the remnants of the Ottoman Empire stumbled upon something extraordinary. Hidden beneath a layer of parchment and decay was a piece of gazelle skin, soft, time-worn, and covered with inked lines and symbols. What they uncovered wasn't just a curiosity, it was an anomaly, a map fragment, intricate and mysterious, unlike anything they expected to find. This was the Piri Reis map, dated to 1513 and signed by an esteemed Ottoman admiral of the same name. While only one half of the map survives, what it reveals has sent ripples through the worlds of cartography, archaeology, and historical science for nearly a century. This map, old even in its own time, depicted coastlines and land masses with a precision that seems to outpace its era by centuries. Most notably, it presents a strikingly accurate rendering of South America's eastern coastline and the western coast of Africa. But what truly stunned researchers was the apparent inclusion of a detailed Antarctic coastline, a continent that wouldn't be officially discovered until 1820. Stranger still, the map shows this icy continent as it might appear without its massive glacial covering, revealing topographical features only confirmed by seismic surveys during the International Geophysical Year in 1958. How could a 16th century mapmaker, drawing with quill and ink, possess this kind of knowledge? How could he chart the unseen contours of a frozen continent 3 centuries before it was acknowledged by modern explorers? Piri Reis himself provides a clue in the margins. In his annotations, he notes that the map was not his original creation, but a synthesis of multiple earlier sources, some from Arab navigators, others from ancient Greek geographers, and still others purportedly dating back to the age of Alexander the Great. These, he says, were maps from the time of the ancients. He also claims that some sources came from Spanish ships seized during privateering missions. Thus, the map may represent a palimpsest of knowledge, a mosaic of fragments preserved, borrowed, and copied across generations. This possibility opens a door to speculation. Could there have been an advanced seafaring civilization long before the rise of known classical empires? A global culture capable of navigating and mapping the Earth with a sophistication rivaling or surpassing early modern Europe? It's a proposition that mainstream academia approaches with caution, but the implications are difficult to ignore. Detailed studies of the Piri Reis map have only deepened the mystery. Some cartographers argue that the southernmost section, thought by some to depict Antarctica, is simply a misinterpretation of South America's lower curve. Yet the match to modern radar-based depictions of subglacial Antarctica is uncannily precise. And the grid work used to lay out the map's coordinates appears to rely on an understanding of spherical geometry and longitudinal division, concepts that were not formally in use in 1513. The implications of this are profound. To accurately map such a coastline would require tools for measuring latitude and longitude, perhaps astrolabes, accurate timekeeping instruments, or triangulation systems. Yet no known ancient society left behind definitive records of such technologies. Could these tools have once existed and been lost? Or were they passed down in secret traditions, never fully understood by later inheritors? Piri Reis never claimed to have seen the lands he mapped. His tone is almost reverent, descriptive, analytical, careful. He points out gaps and uncertainties. He acknowledges the fragmentary nature of his sources. He does not boast, he documents, and that's perhaps the most haunting aspect. The surviving map covers only a portion of the Atlantic, lacking any depiction of North America or Asia. What did the other half include? Could it have held images of the Pacific Islands, the Arctic, more of Antarctica? It's a mystery within a mystery. The map eventually came into the hands of German theologian Gustav Adolf Deissmann, who recognized its potential significance and alerted international scholars. In the mid-20th century, analysts from the US Navy Hydrographic Office and other institutions examined the map's geometry and accuracy. One classified study reportedly concluded that the map's data could not be explained by the geographical knowledge available in the early 1500s. It even suggested that some source materials might have predated classical antiquity and reflected a level of maritime capability not seen again until the 18th century. Of course, skepticism abounds. Critics claim the map's features have been romanticized, that the resemblance to Antarctica is wishful pattern recognition, that ancient maps often included mythical or imagined coastlines. But those arguments grow weaker when the cartographic alignments are measured against modern geographic models. Some of the South American features, rivers, bays, and coastal bends, weren't charted by European powers until well after the 1600s. So what are we left with? A tantalizing glimpse into a lost knowledge tradition. A document suggesting that ancient humans may have known more about their planet than we've credited them for. It invites a rethinking of our historical assumptions. What if progress isn't linear? What if history loops? What if knowledge is gained, forgotten, and regained? After all, the loss of the Library of Alexandria obliterated centuries of recorded wisdom. Entire cultures have been wiped out, their languages and technologies swallowed by war, plague, or apathy. Why not navigation? Why not cartography? The Piri Reis map hints at a civilization, possibly multiple, that understood Earth not as a flat plane but as a vast navigable sphere. A people who sailed beyond the visible horizon, who measured, drew, calculated, and when they vanished they left behind only echoes that men like Piri Reis captured, not fully understanding but preserving nonetheless. Today the map resides in a protected display in Turkey. Tourists peer at it through glass, scholars debate it in journals, and conspiracy theorists weave wild narratives around it. But the truth is probably more subtle, more human. It's a relic of transmission of ancient people seeing the world, recording it, and passing that vision forward until someone, centuries later, put it to parchment. It tells us that history isn't only made by conquerors or kings. Sometimes it's preserved by curious minds, and sometimes it's rediscovered by accident. The Piri Reis map is just a fragment, but it forces us to ask the hardest question of all. What else have we lost? And what stories still lie buried beneath ink, stone, or time, waiting to be read? From a map that was too far ahead, we now turn to a manuscript that refuses to reveal anything at all. A book filled with drawings of unreal plants, cryptic language, and silent pages. A puzzle untouched by time and unsolved by reason. The Voynich manuscript, the book that shouldn't exist. It sits in a locked, climate-controlled vault at Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, an unassuming codex bound in aged leather, its pages yellowed with centuries of mystery. Officially catalogued as MS-408, it is known to the world as the Voynich manuscript, and for over 100 years it has baffled scholars, cryptographers, and linguists alike, regarded as the most enigmatic manuscript ever discovered. At first glance, the Voynich manuscript resembles the notebook of a Renaissance herbalist or astrologer. The surviving 240 pages are filled with looping script, botanical drawings, astronomical diagrams, and surreal imagery. Some illustrations depict bizarre plants, none of which match known species. Others show female figures, often nude, interacting with peculiar tubes or bathing in what appear to be symbolic fluids. Star charts abound, as do zodiac wheels, strange creatures, and what look like alchemical tools. Interspersed throughout is a script so fluid, so consistent, and yet so utterly indecipherable that no one has ever successfully read a single sentence of it. This script is the heart of the mystery. It appears deliberate and structured. The characters don't align with any known language, ancient or modern. They don't correspond with Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, Sanskrit, or any indigenous writing system. Some characters look vaguely familiar, others completely alien. Yet, linguistic analysis shows patterns consistent with natural language. Word length distributions match human speech, grammatical rules seem to apply, and certain letter groupings appear repeatedly with rhythm and structure. Whatever this is, it's not random scribbling. The manuscript is named after Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish-American antiquarian and book dealer who stumbled upon it in 1912 while cataloguing texts at a Jesuit college in Villa Mondragone near Rome. Voynich instantly recognized it as something extraordinary, but even he couldn't have imagined that the mystery he uncovered would outlive him by generations. Radiocarbon dating of the vellum places its origin between 1404 and 1438, squarely in the late medieval period, a time before the printing press, before modern encryption, and before standardized scientific methods. Yet the manuscript exhibits a level of artistic and linguistic complexity that seems far ahead of its time. No known author is credited. There's no title page, no colophon, no explanatory preface. Just page after page of relentless mystery. Over the decades, the Voynich manuscript has drawn attention from every corner of academia and beyond. During World War II, American and British codebreakers, who cracked Nazi and Japanese ciphers, tried and failed to make sense of it. In the modern era, machine learning and artificial intelligence have been unleashed on the text. Still, the meaning eludes us. Language identification software returns no matches. AI trained on global linguistic corpora fails to categorize the script. It is like encountering a voice from another world, whispering in a tongue that never existed. Some scholars have floated the idea that it's an elaborate hoax, an attempt by a medieval con artist to fool a wealthy patron into buying a fake alchemical manuscript. But this theory seems increasingly untenable. The manuscript is too coherent, too internally consistent. It contains no obvious corrections, no breaks in stylistic rhythm. Forging something of this complexity over 240 hand-drawn pages would require not only a linguistic and artistic genius, but a lifetime of obsessive labour. For what gain? The manuscript's drawings only deepen the mystery. Many of the plants depicted are biologically plausible with careful attention to roots, leaves and blossoms, but none match identifiable species. The zodiac wheels feature strange combinations of signs and months, including 13 sign divisions. The women who appear in bathing sequences often hold stars, suggesting an esoteric or cosmological symbolism. One recurring motif is interconnected tubes or vessels, possibly representing bodily systems chemical reactions, or spiritual channels. But none are labelled in any decipherable way. Speculation has run wild. Some believe it to be a pharmacological manual from a now-lost tradition. Others propose it's an attempt to construct a new language, like a medieval Esperanto. Still others believe it is mystical, a sacred text encoded to be read only by initiates of a forgotten faith or society. One radical suggestion is that it's the product of glossolalia, automatic writing created in a trance or spiritual state. But without external context, all we have are guesses. There's another theory, that it was meant for no one but its creator, a solipsistic world rendered in private code. If so, the manuscript becomes not a puzzle but a personal ritual, a kind of diary that can never be read, a monument to one mind's private cosmos. That thought alone is chilling and strangely beautiful. Modern research continues. Every few years, new breakthroughs are claimed, each offering hope, then unravelling under scrutiny. Some believe it to be written in a lost dialect, others argue it's a cipher built on an unknown key. Statistical analysis confirms the presence of language-like properties, but never connects it to anything we know. Yale has digitised the manuscript for public access. Dozens of teams now pore over it, but no one has gotten further than Voynich himself did in 1912. And so, the manuscript waits, silent. Entire books have been written about this one book, and still we don't even know its name. What we do know is this. Someone, centuries ago, sat down and wrote every word of it by hand. They filled every page with care, with purpose. They didn't stop halfway. They didn't abandon the idea. They saw it through. For years, perhaps decades. It wasn't a lark, it wasn't a mistake. It was something they believed in. That's what haunts us. Not just the mystery, but the certainty that it meant something. That the silence of its language is not absence, but occlusion. A door closed with intention. And maybe that's the point, that not everything lost can be recovered, that some stories are written not to be read but to be remembered as enigmas, and that in some deep resonant way the Voynich manuscript is not just unreadable, it's unforgettable. From an unreadable book we now turn to a collection of symbols far older, inscribed not on parchment but on clay. Marks so ancient they may predate history itself. And if they're real, they could rewrite where the story of writing truly begins. The Tartaria tablets, symbols older than writing. In the summer of 1961, deep in the soil of a Romanian village called Tartaria, a team of archaeologists unearthed something that would challenge the entire chronology of human civilization. 3 small clay tablets, covered in mysterious marks. The tablets were fragile, unimposing, no more than a few inches across. One was circular, the other 2 rectangular. Yet etched into their soft surfaces were symbols no one could place. The lines were too purposeful, too consistent to be mere decoration. These weren't scribbles, they were signs. Initial carbon dating of bones buried in the same layer placed the site around 5,300 BCE, over 7,000 years ago. This alone sparked shock, because if these symbols are a form of writing, and many experts believe they are, then they predate the Sumerians, long considered the inventors of writing by more than a millennium. It would mean that the first written language wasn't born in the cradle of civilization, but in prehistoric Europe, and that would change everything. The tablets were found in a Neolithic site associated with the Vinca culture, an enigmatic and sophisticated society that flourished in the Danube River basin thousands of years before Rome, Greece, or Babylon. The Vinca people were not nomads. They built permanent houses, organized settlements, cultivated crops, and engaged in long-distance trade. Their pottery was ornate, their tools were advanced, and they had symbols, repeating, standardized, clearly meaningful marks inscribed on thousands of artifacts across Serbia, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Romania. These symbols, known today as the Vinca script, have been found on pots, idols, spindle whorls, and tools. They include lines, crosses, triangles, chevrons, and tree-like patterns. Some appear identical across sites separated by hundreds of kilometers. Some scholars have identified as many as 700 unique signs. That's not accidental, that's a system. The Tartaria tablets are the clearest example of this system's complexity. One tablet shows a grid of lines within a rectangular border. Another features symbols arranged in vertical columns. The circular tablet contains a cross dividing 4 quadrants, with additional symbols in each. Some researchers believe it could represent a calendar, a cosmological map, or a ritual document. Others suggest it may record ownership, trade, or genealogy. What makes this all the more perplexing is the method used to inscribe the tablets. The signs were pressed in while the clay was wet, then baked. That means they weren't casual doodles. They were intended to last. These were records meant to endure, and yet they vanish. The Vinca script appears across Europe for over 1,000 years, then disappears. No transitional scripts, no evolution into later writing systems, just silence. Why? What happened to the people who wrote these marks? Did their language die with them? Or did their knowledge spread, invisibly influencing later systems we've already recognized, like Linear A, Linear B, or the pictographic Proto-Sumerian signs? Some fringe theorists argue that the Vinca culture seeded knowledge across continents after a forgotten catastrophe. Others suggest we're looking at the remnants of an isolated civilization whose knowledge was snuffed out by environmental collapse, conquest, or assimilation. Skeptics say these signs are merely decorative, that they were symbols of clan affiliation or magical emblems with no linguistic meaning. But the breadth, consistency, and context of the symbols argue otherwise. In modern archaeology, patterns matter, and these marks follow rules. They cluster by type. They recur across centuries and geographies. Some are even carved in sequences, repeated like phrases, not once or twice, but dozens of times. If they are decorative, they are the most linguistically disciplined decorations in the prehistoric world. One tablet, for example, contains a symbol resembling a capital A flanked by a fish-like figure and a three-pronged trident. This same trio appears on other Vinca artifacts, always in the same order. Another tablet displays a grid of 4 identical signs, crosshatch patterns that echo symbols seen in early Mesopotamian proto-cuneiform. Are we looking at convergence? Or continuity? Adding to the enigma, some of the Vinca symbols bear uncanny resemblance to characters found in ancient Chinese oracle bone script, early Indus Valley seals, and even symbols on the Easter Island Rongo-Rongo boards. These cultures were not in contact. These scripts are separated by oceans and millennia, and yet the shapes echo one another, as if drawn from a deeper shared well of forgotten memory. Could it be that writing was not a single invention, but a rediscovery? Could human beings have invented language in symbol form more than once, at different times, in different places, and then lost it again? Some researchers now believe that writing emerged organically in multiple places: Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, Mesoamerica, and maybe, just maybe, the Balkans. If that's true, then the Tartaria tablets are not an outlier. They're a missing link, a piece of the puzzle we've been ignoring. And then there's the burial. The Tartaria tablets were not found alone. They were discovered in a ritual grave buried alongside the bones of what appears to be a high-status individual, as well as other ceremonial objects. One of those objects was a figurine with its hands folded across its chest, an unusual pose in Vinca sculpture. Some believe the figure represents a priestess. Others see it as a deity. Whatever it was, the tablets were part of a sacred deposit. They were meant to be taken into the afterlife. That suggests belief. That suggests language. That suggests importance far beyond the utilitarian. These weren't receipts. They were something more. A message for the gods, a spell, a record of rites. We may never know. The Vinca left no Rosetta Stone, no parallel script, no dictionary. Just lines, curves, and crosses baked into clay and scattered across Europe like the ashes of a forgotten fire. But we do know this. The more we look, the more we find. And the more we find, the harder it becomes to dismiss the idea that someone, somewhere, had already begun to write before the Sumerians carved their wedge-shaped marks into tablets of wet earth. The Tartaria tablets may not give us all the answers, but they ask better questions than we've dared to pose. Questions like, who were these people? What did they know? And why do we pretend we already have the whole story? From clay tablets inscribed in the shadows of forgotten temples, we travel next to a land of wind and sand, where ancient people carved messages so massive, so perfect, they can only be read from the air. Patterns that may not have been made for human eyes at all. The Nazca Line's messages only the sky could read. Beneath the relentless, scorching sun of southern Peru, across nearly 200 square miles of desolate, sun-baked plateau, lies a vast canvas of mystery, the Nazca Lines. These aren't paintings, nor are they sculpted or raised monuments. They are drawn directly into the skin of the earth. long, deliberate, razor-straight lines that stretch for miles, twisting and curving into figures both geometric and organic. These massive etchings include creatures like a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, a pair of hands, and a curious humanoid with bulging eyes. Together they form a message so large, so intricate, that it can only be truly grasped from above. The Nazca lines were first catapulted into global awareness in the 1920s when commercial aircraft flying over the Nazca Desert revealed a perspective that had eluded those on the ground. Pilots observed what appeared to be a vast network of colossal drawings, over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 biomorphic designs. The hummingbird geoglyph alone spans more than 300 feet, surpassing the length of a standard American football field. Some of these lines extend arrow straight for over 9 miles, maintaining their direction across undulating terrain with astonishing precision. So how did the Nazca people, who thrived between 200 BCE and 600 CE, achieve such geometric consistency without any known form of aerial perspective? They had no aircraft, no towers, and no satellites. Nothing that could have allowed them to observe their work from the sky. The prevailing method involved removing the oxidized reddish-brown pebbles from the surface to reveal the lighter-colored ground beneath. It's deceptively simple, but requires a level of coordination and planning that borders on miraculous. Archaeologists have discovered remnants of wooden stakes and what may have been rudimentary surveying tools, suggesting that they employed a kind of proto-trigonometry. Still, that doesn't fully explain the scale or perfection of their designs. The real puzzle is not only how they were made, but why. One widely accepted theory is that the lines held religious or astronomical meaning. Some are aligned with celestial events like solstices, while others may serve as indicators of subterranean water sources, which would have been critical in a region that receives less than an inch of rain per year. Another theory proposes that the lines were ritual pathways, meant to be walked during religious ceremonies, but the presence of giant animal figures, their overwhelming size, and the necessity of an aerial view complicate this narrative. Why create a design so large that you could never see it in its entirety from the ground? Perhaps the Nazca were attempting to communicate with entities beyond their own kind. Some researchers have posited that the geoglyphs were intended for the gods, a kind of sacred art for celestial eyes. In the 1960s, the controversial Swiss author Erich von Daniken suggested that the lines were landing strips for extraterrestrial visitors. While this theory has been widely dismissed by mainstream archaeology, it touches on a profound mystery. Why would a pre-industrial society invest so much labour in creating works that can only be appreciated from hundreds of feet above? And it's not just in Peru. Comparable geoglyphs have been discovered in Chile, Bolivia, Kazakhstan, the southwestern United States, and parts of the Middle East. Some of these precede the Nazca by centuries. Could there have been a shared global impulse, a deep-rooted human desire to inscribe the earth with symbols visible only from the sky? Or were these cultures independently expressing a similar spiritual or cosmic urge? Recent drone surveys have unveiled hundreds of previously unknown figures, many of which are now barely distinguishable due to erosion and human interference. The rate at which these geoglyphs are disappearing is alarming. Tourism, construction, and the elements threaten their existence. Intriguingly, some lines were redrawn by later generations, suggesting that the desert served as a living manuscript, edited and revisited by successive hands over centuries. The accuracy of some designs also defies explanation. The spider geoglyph, for instance, features anatomical details like the placement of reproductive organs, a detail not observable without magnification. How could a society without microscopes or lenses possess such knowledge? Could it have been passed down from an earlier, more technologically advanced civilization? Or were the Nazca far more observant and sophisticated than we have credited them for? The monkey geoglyph is especially noteworthy. Crafted in a single unbroken line, it depicts a creature with a spiraled tail and exaggerated fingers, suggesting not just form, but movement. It's almost as if the line dances across the desert, freezing motion in the soil. If the lines were used as ceremonial walkways, why embed them with such symbolism and intricacy? Why invest so much in scale and complexity when the full picture could never be appreciated by those walking it? Some theories now explore the idea that the geoglyphs may have had an auditory or vibrational purpose. Perhaps the act of walking along specific lines created particular sounds or resonances, turning them into sonic pathways used in rituals. The arid open environment of the Nazca Plateau could have served as a natural amplifier, carrying chants or footsteps over great distances. One of the most enigmatic figures is the so-called astronaut, a humanoid shape with a rounded head, enormous eyes, and one arm raised as if in greeting or signal. Located on a hillside, unlike most other geoglyphs that lie flat, its placement invites speculation. Was it meant to be seen from even greater heights? Was it a deity, a messenger, or something else entirely? The deeper one delves into the mystery of the Nazca lines, the more elusive their meaning becomes. Despite extensive research, no single theory satisfactorily accounts for all their features. They are simultaneously artistic and functional, religious and scientific, human and perhaps, in some eyes, otherworldly. The Nazca people left no written records, no clear oral histories, and no explicit clues. All we have are the lines, etched in silence, etched in time. Could the Nazca have used some form of aerial observation? Hot air balloons have been suggested, but no physical evidence supports this. Experimental recreations using only tools and techniques available in antiquity have shown that it's possible to create a geoglyph of reasonable size, but the process demands immense planning and manpower. These were not casual endeavours. They were organised communal projects rooted in shared vision and cultural identity. Which brings us to the final haunting question. What kind of society pours its energy into works that offer no immediate utility, no practical reward, and no guarantee of being seen? The answer may lie in belief. Perhaps the Nazca saw the earth as a sacred canvas, and the sky as the eye of the divine. Perhaps these lines were prayers, written not in ink but in dust and stone. Such a worldview requires a staggering level of faith. Faith in things unseen, in purposes unknowable. It suggests a cosmic philosophy where meaning is not confined to the visible or the immediate. In this light, the Nazca lines become more than an archaeological curiosity. They become a profound testament to the human need to connect with something greater, to leave a message that endures beyond understanding. And maybe that's the ultimate message. The Nazca lines are not just drawings, they're a dialogue across time and space, a script in stone, a silence that speaks. Next we follow a trail that leads even deeper into mystery, a global lattice of ancient sites, pyramids in Egypt, temples in Cambodia, megalithic ruins in Africa, that align in ways too precise to ignore. Could these sites too be part of an ancient knowledge map that once spanned the world? The global grid, sacred sites that align across the world. There's a pattern on this planet, a line drawn not with ink or fire but through stone, myth and time. It stretches from the pyramids of Giza to the ruins of Angkor Wat, from Machu Picchu to the Moai of Easter Island, from ancient Zimbabwe to the temples of India. It cuts through deserts, jungles, mountains and oceans. It's been called the Great Circle, the ancient grid, the Earth alignment, but it should not exist. At its core, the idea is simple. When you plot many of the world's most mysterious and sacred ancient sites on a globe, they form a line. A nearly perfect great circle like the equator but tilted, running across the surface of the Earth at an angle of roughly 30 degrees from the equatorial plane. This alignment is not just a coincidence. Its consistency and the kinds of sites it touches suggests a possibility we rarely entertain, that someone, long ago, understood the true shape of the Earth. And they marked it with monuments: Giza, the Parthenon, Petra, Mohenjo-Daro, the Nazca Lines, Easter Island. These aren't just isolated wonders. According to researchers who study the phenomenon, they lie along a shared path, an invisible thread woven through the bones of the Earth. But the implications are unsettling, because these sites were built by vastly different cultures at vastly different times, with no known contact, no shared tools, no unified language, and yet they seem to obey a single hidden map. Take Giza and Easter Island, two sites separated by 8,000 miles. Each was constructed with near impossible precision. The Great Pyramid is aligned with the cardinal directions more accurately than any modern building. Easter Island's Moai all face inward, watching over the land as if guarding secrets buried beneath the soil. Both lie on this same line. Further along the alignment we encounter the ancient city of Petra, carved into rose-red rock, Angkor Wat, whose spires mirror the stars, the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, the sacred stone circle of Ollantaytambo, the megalithic fortress of Sacsayhuaman. Sites that individually defy explanation and collectively suggest a forgotten global knowledge, skeptics argue it's all confirmation bias, that if you place enough points on a sphere, some will form lines. But this isn't just a line, it's a circle, measurable, mathematically perfect, bisecting the globe through ancient wonders chosen not for geography, but for their enduring mystery. What kind of civilization would think in those terms? Who had the capability or the reason to chart the Earth in such a way? The alignment connects sacred places, but also spiritual ideas. It links cosmologies. Many of the cultures along this line believed in life after death, in sacred geometry, in sky gods who came from the heavens. These themes echo from temple to temple. It's as if they were all drawing from the same unseen manuscript, a cosmic instruction book we've lost. Let's take a closer look at some of these sites. In Mali, the ancient city of Timbuktu lies just off the grid, but nearby is the Dogon homeland, a culture known for their advanced astronomical knowledge, specifically of the star Sirius B, which they somehow knew was a binary star system centuries before modern telescopes confirmed it. The Dogon claim this knowledge was given to them by the Nommo, beings from the sky. Myth? Perhaps, but myths often encode more than we expect. Next, there's the temple complex of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Massive, intricate, and astronomically aligned. Its towers correspond to the peaks of Mount Meru in Hindu mythology, and its layout maps the constellation Draco. It wasn't just a temple, it was a star chart carved into Earth. Follow the grid west and you'll cross the ancient city of Persepolis, then the Sumerian heartlands of Mesopotamia, where the concept of the ziggurat was born, artificial mountains meant to touch the heavens. Further still, and you'll encounter the oracle at Delphi, where Pythia spoke in riddles while seated atop a fissure that released natural gas. Was this coincidence, or knowledge of geology and energy lines passed down through priesthoods? Then there's the intersection with the lost city of Petra in modern-day Jordan. Carved into the cliffs, Petra is more than a city, it's a stone cathedral of light and shadow. The sun aligns perfectly through its key temple on the solstice. The knowledge of celestial patterns wasn't just artistic, it was practical, vital, and deeply embedded into the culture. Across the Atlantic, we meet Teotihuacan in Mexico, a city laid out with mathematical precision, its massive avenue of the dead aligned to celestial bodies, its pyramids mirroring those at Giza. The builders are unknown, the original name is lost. Even the Aztecs, who found it in ruins, believed it had been built by gods. From there, the grid slices across the Nazca Plateau, then dips toward the Andes, Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo. These Incan and pre-Incan marvels contain stonework so exact that modern tools can barely replicate it. Blocks weighing dozens of tons fit together with no mortar, surviving centuries of earthquakes without collapse. Easter Island, one of the grid's final points, is home to the enigmatic Moai statues, colossal heads carved from volcanic rock, transported miles without wheels or beasts of burden. The island is one of the most remote places on Earth, yet its monuments exhibit the same reverence for alignment, symmetry, and celestial precision. And then there's something stranger still. Some sites are not simply placed on the grid, they reflect its angle in their architecture. The pyramids of Giza, the alignment of the temples at Baalbek, the orientation of roads in ancient Cusco. Some scholars argue they match the angle of the Great Circle Line itself, as if they weren't just placed on it but designed with it in mind. If so, then we're faced with a chilling possibility that someone had the ability to not only map the world accurately, but to encode those measurements into stone across continents. The technological leap required for this kind of geodetic awareness is staggering. Today we use satellites and GPS to measure Earth's curvature. In the ancient world, this would have required sea voyages, cross-continental travel, or some unknown method of calculation. No single known civilization had the reach or the means, but multiple disconnected cultures all doing it independently and producing results that fall on a unified line? That seems even less likely. One possibility is knowledge inheritance, bits and pieces passed down from a mother culture, a civilization so far back in time that even its ruins are gone. The survivors of such a collapse might have travelled outward, taking fragments of knowledge with them, celestial data, construction techniques, myths that became religion. Over time, these fragments formed the basis for the ancient societies we know today. There are references in nearly every ancient tradition to such a predecessor civilization. The Greeks called it Atlantis. The Hindus refer to the lost continent of Kumari Kandam. Native American tribes speak of a time before time, when the gods walked among men. The Egyptians insisted their knowledge came from the followers of Horus, beings who arrived long before the first dynasty. Could these stories all point to the same origin? What if the global grid isn't just geography, it's memory? What if it's the last surviving outline of a forgotten world? The Earth alignment remains controversial, of course. It doesn't appear in academic textbooks. Most scholars dismiss it as numerology or pseudoscience. But that doesn't stop the pattern from existing, and it doesn't explain how so many impossibly advanced constructions ended up so precisely placed. Even if the grid is an accident, the monuments it touches remain. They challenge our understanding of the past. They suggest collaboration, communication, or a shared awareness that transcends the limits of known history. Whether laid down by a prehistoric global civilization, guided by subtle Earth energies, or forged by convergent genius, the grid calls out across time, and it may be the oldest map we've ever drawn. Sunken civilizations and impossible megastructures, scattered beneath the world's oceans and embedded deep in remote terrains, are structures that defy conventional timelines, challenge our understanding of engineering, and whisper of forgotten knowledge. From the submerged terraces off Yonaguni, Japan, to sunken cities off the coasts of India, Cuba and Malta, there lies a submerged story written in stone. A story conventional history struggles to explain. Start with Yonaguni. Located near Okinawa, Japan, this underwater site has sparked fierce debate among scholars and explorers alike. Discovered in the 1980s, the Yonaguni monument features terraces, sharp right angles, and what some believe to be steps, platforms and roads, all carved into bedrock. Proponents argue it resembles a pyramid or ziggurat, possibly dating back to 10,000 BCE, which would predate any known civilization by thousands of years. Skeptics call it natural, but the debate itself reveals how little we truly know about our distant past. Then consider the Cuban underwater anomaly. In 2001, a sonar survey of the seafloor off Cuba's western coast revealed geometric formations lying over 600 meters beneath the surface, rectangular structures, pyramidal forms, and patterns suggesting an urban layout. Divers reported megalithic stone blocks in a configuration far too precise to be natural. Given the depth, these structures would have been built more than 12,000 years ago, before the last ice age ended, when sea levels were drastically lower. India's Gulf of Hambat adds to the intrigue. Off its coast lies the submerged ruins of what may have been a vast city, complete with roads and pottery, now resting beneath 40 meters of water. The discovery hints at a sophisticated society predating the Indus Valley civilization. Similar tales surround the submerged ruins off Malta and the Bahamas, reinforcing a pattern of ancient coastal settlements now buried by the sea. On land, megalithic marvels challenge the capabilities of both ancient and modern engineers. In Baalbek, Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter stands atop a foundation made of the largest stone blocks ever used in construction. The most massive, dubbed the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs approximately 1,200 tons. Even today, modern cranes would struggle to lift it, yet it was quarried, moved, and precisely placed thousands of years ago. Travel to Bolivia, and you'll encounter Pumapunku, part of the Tiwanaku complex. This site showcases stones made of andesite, harder than granite, carved with incredible precision. These blocks feature perfect angles, drill holes, and interlocking joints that resemble modern machine tooling. Archaeologists date the site to 1,500 years ago, but the craftsmanship suggests a legacy of knowledge that extends much deeper. And then there's Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, possibly the oldest known temple complex on Earth. Dating back over 11,000 years, it features T-shaped pillars adorned with carvings of animals and abstract symbols. No evidence of agriculture or settled life surrounds it, yet it displays monumental architecture and religious symbolism. The site was intentionally buried, preserved in pristine condition, and redefines our understanding of prehistoric societies. Consider also the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. Its alignment to true north is nearly perfect. The stone blocks are cut and set with such precision that modern builders struggle to replicate them. No blueprints survive. No writings detail its construction. And despite being one of the most iconic monuments in human history, It contains no inscriptions declaring who built it or why. In Peru, the zigzagging walls of Sacsayhuaman fit massive, irregular stones together so perfectly that not even a blade of grass can fit between them. Their resilience against earthquakes hints at a design based not just on strength, but on flexibility, an understanding of geometry and physics far ahead of its time. Sacred geometry also echoes in India's Kailasa temple at Ellora. Carved from a single rock face, this monolithic temple was excavated from the top down. Over 400,000 tons of rock were removed to reveal intricately carved pillars, halls, and statues. This method left no room for error and no traceable scaffolding or quarry methods. The temple's form mimics Mount Kailash, the mythic abode of Lord Shiva, blending architecture with sacred cosmology. In Ethiopia, the churches of Lalibela add another dimension to this mystery. Hewn from solid rock, these medieval structures are said to replicate Jerusalem in their arrangement. While officially dated to the 12th century, some researchers believe they were built atop far older foundations, possibly preserving construction techniques and spiritual motifs from a much earlier time. Throughout the ancient world, structures show not just mastery of stone, but a harmony with celestial cycles. Temples are aligned to solstices and equinoxes. Monuments mirror constellations. Buildings vibrate with a mathematical cadence. In these places, geometry wasn't just applied, it was worshipped. A growing body of theorists suggests that lost civilizations might have harnessed technologies unfamiliar to us, based not on combustion engines, but on sound frequencies, magnetism, or resonance. Some studies in modern acoustics have shown that sound waves can move small objects. Could the ancients have discovered a way to amplify this effect? Legends certainly hint at it. Egyptian texts describe the priest Imhotep moving massive stones with chants. Tibetan monks reportedly used musical instruments to levitate rocks. These accounts are often dismissed as folklore, but what if they preserve a sliver of forgotten science? And always the ocean looms. Many of the world's largest cities are built near water. If there were once advanced civilizations predating the known ones, it's likely their remains now lie underwater, submerged by the rising seas at the end of the last ice age. Plato's story of Atlantis, once regarded as pure allegory, begins to sound more like a veiled memory of a civilization erased by catastrophe. The monuments that remain, whether submerged beneath waves or standing atop windswept mountains, are not random. They carry intention, symmetry, alignment. They were not just built, they were conceived, and they whisper of a worldview in which knowledge, belief, and the stars were all part of the same cosmic dance. In our next chapter, we move from stone to mechanism. Buried beneath the Aegean Sea, recovered from a shipwreck, lies a device so intricate that it shattered our assumptions about ancient engineering. With its gears, dials, and astronomical calculations, it is proof that precision machinery existed thousands of years before the Industrial Age. It was found in fragments, but even broken, it changed everything. The Antikythera mechanism, ancient technology that shouldn't exist. In 1901, a group of sponge divers working near the Greek island of Antikythera made a discovery that would change the trajectory of historical understanding forever. While exploring a sunken Roman-era shipwreck, they retrieved a corroded lump of bronze and wood that appeared to be little more than scrap. It was broken into dozens of fragments, encrusted with centuries of marine sediment. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, but nestled within was a mechanical marvel that would ignite over a century of research and speculation. The object, now known as the Antikythera mechanism, contained dozens of interlocking bronze gears, not just random components, but precise calibrated elements functioning together like the innards of a clock. This was not just a sophisticated device, it was a machine of astonishing complexity, capable of performing calculations that could predict eclipses, chart planetary motions, and simulate lunar cycles with mind-boggling accuracy. Dating to the 1st or 2nd century BCE, the mechanism was essentially an analog computer, a cosmic calculator built over 2,000 years ago, centuries before any known civilization was thought to possess such mechanical sophistication. What's more, it operated with a level of precision not seen again until the invention of astronomical clocks in 14th century Europe, a gap of over 1,000 years. The gears were crafted with such accuracy that modern experts compare them to the quality of 18th century horology. Some with differential gears, an innovation typically credited to the 19th century. It wasn't a prototype, it was a refined instrument, suggesting familiarity with the technology. The mechanism also showed signs of maintenance and repair, indicating it was not a display piece but a working tool. Yet no texts from antiquity mention it. No diagrams survive. No ancient authors described anything remotely like it. The Antikythera mechanism emerged into modern awareness as a singular enigma, an outlier that suggests it wasn't alone. Historians speculate that the device was likely produced in a hub of Hellenistic science, such as Rhodes or Alexandria. Some attribute its design to Hipparchus, one of Greece's most brilliant astronomers. Others suggest influence from Archimedes or his intellectual descendants. But its origins remain obscure, and the absence of references in historical records suggests that other such devices may have existed and were either lost or deliberately destroyed. Its functions were extraordinary. It tracked the 223-month Saros cycle to predict solar and lunar eclipses, followed the Metonic calendar, and calculated the positions of the 5 known planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, as well as the Sun and Moon. It even featured dials for the timing of Pan-Hellenic games like the Olympics. The machine used a combination of gear trains, dials, and inscriptions to perform its operations, all controlled by a single hand-cranked input. This was not just a calendar, it was a model of the cosmos, an ancient orrery that could forecast celestial events with startling accuracy. It simulated the irregular orbit of the Moon using a pin-and-slot mechanism and modelled epicyclic motion, aligning with ancient Greek theories of planetary motion. Such precision requires not only mechanical skill, but a deep understanding of astronomy and mathematics. That this device could exist so early in history raises troubling questions. How did such knowledge arise, and why did it disappear? The collapse of the Roman Empire, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, and centuries of war and suppression may have obliterated the intellectual environments where such innovations flourished. It is possible the Antikythera mechanism was just one of many similar tools, created in an era where scientific inquiry and craftsmanship intersected in ways we're only beginning to rediscover. There are whispers in ancient traditions that suggest the Greeks were not the sole originators of this knowledge. Babylonian astronomers mapped planetary cycles thousands of years earlier. Egyptian temples were aligned to Sirius and Orion. Indian texts such as the Surya Siddhanta described complex planetary models long before Greek science reached its peak. Could it be that the Greeks inherited a body of ancient wisdom pieced together from even older civilizations? This idea aligns with theories of a lost mother culture, an advanced, possibly maritime civilization that disseminated scientific principles across the ancient world. In this context, the Antikythera mechanism becomes a relic of a longer, hidden lineage, a device crafted from the echoes of a forgotten golden age. And consider this. If our own civilization were to collapse today, how much would survive? Plastics and electronics degrade, paper burns, but metal, especially bronze, endures. The mechanism's preservation was a fluke of environment and luck. What if there are others, buried beneath centuries of earth and sea waiting to be found? The journey to understanding the Antikythera mechanism has taken over a century. Through X-ray tomography, 3D reconstruction, and AI modelling, researchers continue to uncover its secrets. Each layer reveals more intricacy, more brilliance. Recent studies suggest the device might have been even more complex than initially believed, potentially including functions that we have yet to decode. One chilling possibility, the version we found is not the most advanced. It could have been a student's project, a simplified model, or a component of a much larger machine. If true, then the real pinnacle of ancient mechanical knowledge has yet to be uncovered, or has been lost entirely. The implications for history are profound. For centuries, education has framed ancient societies as intelligent, yet technologically constrained. The Antikythera mechanism disrupts that narrative. It forces us to imagine ancient minds not only observing the universe, but building models of it. Not only thinking deeply, but engineering elegantly. If such a device could exist 2,000 years ago, what else might have been possible? Were there observatories filled with such mechanisms? Did scholars build tools that we've mistaken for relics or dismissed as too advanced for their era? Could the past have glimpsed the future in ways we're only now starting to understand? Today we marvel at the quantum computing, analog modelling, predictive AI, But perhaps these ideas are not entirely new. Perhaps they echo a much older tradition, one rooted not in digital code but in gears, ratios, and cosmic harmony. The Antikythera mechanism is not just an ancient artifact. It is a message from history, a mechanical whisper across millennia, reminding us that the limits of the past are often the assumptions of the present. Next, we descend further into the forbidden strata of history, where objects emerge from layers of rock supposedly millions of years old. These are the so-called out-of-place artifacts, items that don't just rewrite history, but threaten to erase and redraw it entirely. If real, they change everything. Out-of-place artifacts, the objects that shouldn't exist. Across the deserts, mines, and mountainous regions of the Earth, strange and puzzling objects have emerged, artifacts that seem to defy the known timeline of human civilization. Known as out-of-place artifacts, or UPARTs, these items appear in geological layers and archaeological contexts where they simply shouldn't exist. These are tools, figurines, spheres, footprints, and imprints discovered in strata that, by accepted scientific standards, are far too ancient to include signs of intelligent life. And yet, there they are. Some of these objects have been explained away, dismissed as hoaxes or attributed to natural anomalies. Others remain deeply unexplained. But all raise a profound and disquieting possibility. What if ours is not the first advanced culture to walk the Earth? Consider the Klerksdorp spheres, uncovered from South African mines in rock over 2.8 billion years old. These metallic spheres, perfectly spherical and grooved, were found embedded in pyrophyllite, a material older than multicellular life itself. Some scientists claim they are natural concretions. Others point to the symmetry and grooves as signs of intelligent manufacture. If these are not geological flukes, then we are left contemplating the work of a civilization predating biological complexity. Then there is the London hammer. Discovered in Texas during the 1930s, this iron and wood hammer was found inside a concretion of rock dating back over 100 million years. The hammer's wooden handle had begun to fossilize, and the iron head showed no signs of modern tool marks. It wasn't simply lost and encased. The rock had formed around it, suggesting it lay in place before fossilization occurred. Who was building with iron when dinosaurs still roamed? The Coso artifact adds another layer of mystery. In 1961, rock collectors in California cracked open a geode-like rock to discover a metal core, a spark plug, or something very much like one, encased in material dated to hundreds of thousands of years. Initial X-rays revealed a central shaft and spring-like features. Was this a modern contamination? Or did it point to a technology that shouldn't have existed in such an ancient geological context? The Nampa figurine, found in Idaho in 1889, was retrieved from a well boring 320 feet below ground, in Pliocene-era sediment over 2 million years old. The tiny human-like figurine bore clear features, arms, legs, facial details, and resembled ancient idols. Its provenance remains controversial, but if genuine, it points to intelligent artistry long before Homo sapiens officially arrived. Coal seams have also yielded inexplicable discoveries. In Oklahoma, a coal miner in 1912 found a small iron pot inside a lump of coal. In 1944, a boy in Pennsylvania split open a coal piece and found an iron cup. Since coal forms over hundreds of millions of years, these findings, if authentic, suggest intelligent activity at a time when no humans, or even mammals, are thought to have existed. Footprints present further anomalies. In the Pluxee riverbed of Texas, human-like footprints appear alongside dinosaur tracks in limestone, dated over 100 million years old. Critics argue they're eroded dinosaur tracks or outright fakes. Others remain unresolved, resisting both dismissal and explanation. Stone tools discovered in deeply buried strata further complicate the picture. At Hueyatlaco, Mexico, archaeologists found sophisticated stone tools beside animal bones in deposits over 250,000 years old, far older than accepted human migration into the Americas. When geologist Virginia Steen McIntyre refused to revise the dating, she faced professional ostracism. In Africa's Latoli region, Mary Leakey discovered 3.6 million-year-old footprints with a human-like gait. Attributed to Australopithecus, these prints nonetheless resemble modern human walking patterns more closely than expected, igniting debate over who or what left them. Metallic anomalies abound. The Dorchester pot, discovered in Massachusetts in 1851 after a dynamite blast, resembled ornate Indian metalwork but came from rock over 600 million years old. Brass and aluminum fragments have surfaced in Precambrian formations. These finds are often dismissed without thorough analysis, yet their implications remain tantalizing. Even ancient texts seem to echo this mystery. The Sanskrit Vedas describe Vimanas, flying machines piloted by gods, powered by mercury and sonic energy. While many regard these stories as myth, the technical specificity has led others to see them as ancient memories of lost technologies. The Sumerian king list details reigns of kings lasting thousands of years, well before the flood. Are these mythic timeframes, or echoes of forgotten dynasties? In South America, the Quimbaya artifacts, tiny gold objects shaped like modern aircraft, have flown successfully in modern reconstructions, raising eyebrows among engineers and archaeologists alike. Architectural parts deepen the enigma. Nan Madol, a megalithic city built atop a coral reef, used basalt columns weighing tons, placed without mortar, their origin unknown. At Egypt's Serapeum of Saqqara, massive granite boxes rest in subterranean tunnels, each weighing 100 tons with perfectly smooth interiors and drilled holes that modern tools struggle to replicate. In 1909, an article in the Arizona Gazette described an underground chamber discovered in the Grand Canyon, allegedly filled with Egyptian-style statues and writing. The Smithsonian denied involvement, and the site has never been confirmed. Still, rumours persist of sealed chambers and restricted areas within the canyon. These anomalies raise more than archaeological questions. They challenge the narrative of history itself. What if civilization is not a singular forward march but a cycle? What if humanity rises, falls, and rises again, leaving behind whispers in stone, fossil, and myth? Could there have been earlier species, perhaps even Homo sapiens, who developed tools, cities, and technologies only to be erased by natural disasters, wars, or time? The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which suggests a massive comet strike 12,800 years ago, lends credence to the idea that global cataclysms could have wiped out entire cultures. We must consider the uncomfortable possibility that we are not the first, that the ruins we find are not only echoes of forgotten cities but fingerprints of prior iterations of intelligent life. Their legacy, partial, enigmatic, and often dismissed, lies buried beneath our assumptions. There is a silence in the earth, a stubborn, profound quiet beneath our feet. It speaks not in words but in anomalies, in tools, prints, carvings, and machines, in enigmas we are only beginning to hear. Perhaps the past is not past, perhaps it circles back. We rise, we build, we fall, we forget. Next we follow the myths, the global stories of gods from the sky, of ancient wars in the heavens, and of flying machines not unlike our own. Legends told on every continent. What if they weren't stories? What if they were memories, encoded in myth, waiting to be understood as the true prehistory of mankind? Ancient mythologies and lost technologies. Across every culture, on every continent, throughout every era of recorded memory, ancient mythologies speak with uncanny resonance. Beneath their rich symbolism and poetic allegory, a deeper, consistent pattern emerges. Stories of divine beings descending from the heavens, gods, sages, star people, bearing gifts of knowledge, teaching agriculture, mathematics, architecture, and astronomy, welding tools and weapons that thunder, flash, and devastate, travelling in chariots of fire or floating discs. And always these figures vanish, leaving only legend in their wake. These aren't isolated myths. They are recurring echoes, transcultural, archetypal, and possibly historical. Take the Anunnaki of Sumerian lore, beings who descended from the sky, established cities, and imparted civilization to early humanity. The ancient tablets describe not only gods, but airborne travel and control over elemental forces. The Akkadian concept of me referred to physical objects, tablets, or devices that carried divine knowledge, hints of information storage or even technology. In India's Vedic tradition, texts like the Mahabharata and Ramayana recount aerial battles and vehicles called Vimanas. These were not vague metaphors. The Vaimanika Shastra describes propulsion systems, mercury engines, and flight capabilities. Some passages include schematics and flight protocols. While often dismissed as imaginative fiction, the technical specificity leads others to suspect these are inherited memories of a technological age. The Mahabharata also describes the use of energy weapons that cause citywide destruction. In one passage, a weapon explodes with brightness rivaling 1,000 suns. Ash falls, hair and nails fall out. The survivors wander, diseased and dazed. The resemblance to nuclear fallout is haunting. In biblical tradition, Ezekiel's vision details a fiery craft of wheels within wheels, rimmed with eyes descending from the sky. In the Book of Enoch, a group of watchers, celestial beings, come down to Earth, interbreed with humans and teach advanced arts. Metallurgy, weapon-making, astronomy and medicine. The Nephilim, giants born of these unions, walked among men. The Mesoamerican god Quetzalcoatl, like the Andean deity Viracocha, was a bearded teacher from across the sea. He brought laws, calendar systems, agriculture, and left with a promise to return. He rode a feathered serpent, interpreted by some as symbolic, others as technological. These cultures mapped stars, predicted eclipses, and built vast stone cities aligned to the cosmos. Among the Dogon of Mali, myth speaks of the Nommo, amphibious beings from Sirius. They taught humanity and imparted star knowledge. The Dogon were aware of Sirius B, a white dwarf companion star to Sirius A, centuries before its western discovery. Ancient Egypt attributed writing and cosmic order to the god Thoth. Temples aligned with Orion's belt. Dendera's reliefs appear to show bulb-like lights. Abydos has a cartouche with shapes resembling helicopters and submarines. These anomalies are often dismissed as later recarvings, but the coincidence of imagery is striking. In Norse mythology, the Bifrost Bridge connects realms. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, always returns when thrown and emits thunder. Myths or misunderstood mechanics? Polynesian traditions recall star beings who arrived by canoe from the sky. Aboriginal Australians tell of discs descending with singing, glowing figures. African tribes speak of gods who moulded the land with fire. These aren't just dreams, they may be encoded memory. Throughout all these myths lies a common thread: the ending, a catastrophe, a flood, a divine war, a shattering fall. Plato's Atlantis follows this model. A sophisticated maritime empire, rich in technology, falls in a single day and night. The Younger Dryas impact theory, which dates a sudden global catastrophe around 12,800 years ago, aligns eerily well, marked by mass extinctions, a sharp climate shift, and global flooding. And perhaps the physical echoes remain: pyramids on every continent, stone circles and ziggurats spanning cultures with no contact. Why do the same shapes and alignments appear in Egypt, Mesoamerica, China, and the Pacific Islands? Was there a shared source of knowledge, passed down before cultures splintered? Consider technological echo, the idea that tools from a lost civilization are remembered only in function or ritual. Sacred chants may once have been activation phrases. Incantations, merely misunderstood operating instructions. Temples may encode geometry not just for beauty but to preserve cosmological constants. Pi, Phi, precession cycles. The sky gods of myth, whether extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or ancient humans from a past civilization, could represent actual contact events. If these beings brought technology, even in limited form, it might have accelerated human development. The linguistic patterns across ancient texts suggest similar structures of cosmology: three-world systems, sacred geometry, astronomical law. These are not easily dismissed as coincidence. They may represent remnants of a singular global educational system, one now fragmented across myths. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, gates guarded by scorpion men, a plant of immortality, and a great flood repeat themes found in Genesis, the Vedas, and Native American stories. These motifs could stem from a shared prehistoric source. Artifacts compound the mystery. The dials of the Antikythera mechanism resemble star charts. The Dendera zodiac is out of place in Egyptian canon. In India, temples like Hoysalaswara show carvings that appear to depict astronauts. Colombian reliefs feature human figures with tablets and helmets. These are often dismissed as anachronisms or modern projections, but when they appear independently across the globe, they raise valid questions. Sacred architecture may serve as a black box, a message to the future. The Great Pyramid, for example, encodes values of Earth's size, solar cycles, and mathematical constants. Not religious artifacts, but preserved knowledge. Yet the machines themselves are gone. The craft have vanished, their power sources decayed. All that remains is memory, muted in myth, echoed in story. But perhaps, as science reawakens to the deeper dimensions of reality, we're beginning to remember. Quantum physics now parallels Vedic ideas of multiverses and consciousness. AI deciphers ancient codes. New ruins are found beneath rising seas. The gods may not return, but their fingerprints are everywhere. Forbidden maps and ancient navigation. Before satellites, before telescopes, before sextants or even compasses, someone mapped the world. Not just coastlines, but entire continents, including ones supposedly unknown to the cultures who drew them. This mystery begins with a single, worn piece of gazelle skin parchment, drawn in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. This map has become one of the most controversial artifacts in historical cartography. It accurately depicts the western coasts of Africa and Europe and the eastern coast of South America with an uncanny degree of precision. But the real controversy lies farther south. The Piri Reis map appears to show the northern coastline of Antarctica centuries before it was officially discovered, and not just the ice-covered shoreline visible today, but the landmass beneath the ice. A contour known only to modern science through seismic surveys and radar imaging. How could a 16th century map show what lies under a mile of ice? Piri Reis himself didn't claim authorship. He wrote in the margins that the map was compiled using older sources, ancient charts passed down from earlier seafarers, perhaps going back to the Library of Alexandria or beyond. If that's true, it suggests that long before modern history began, there were mariners who sailed the world, saw the southern lands, and recorded them with stunning accuracy. This map is not alone. The Oronce Fine Map of 1531 also shows an ice-free Antarctica labelled as Terra Australis. The Boache map of 1737 depicts Antarctica with rivers and mountain ranges, features unknown until recent times. The Zeno map, 1380, the Vinland map, purportedly 1440, and the Dulcet Portoland chart, 1339, show islands and coastlines of the North Atlantic long before Viking expansion or Columbus. Some skeptics argue these maps are imaginative extrapolations, speculative depictions of terra incognita, but others see the level of geographical detail, correct longitudinal spacing, and accurate relative proportions as evidence of knowledge passed down through unknown means. Many maps employ projection styles and distances that would require an understanding of spherical trigonometry and advanced surveying techniques. This raises the question, how did these maps exist in the pre-modern world? Were they echoes of a lost global tradition of mapping? Could it be that before the known seafaring empires there was a civilization or a maritime order that once circumnavigated the planet? The implications are staggering. In mainstream history, detailed geographic knowledge developed slowly. Ancient Mediterranean cultures, for example, gradually accumulated their understanding of coastlines through merchant trade. But that process leaves a trail, maps improving incrementally, inaccuracies being corrected, coastlines refined step by step. These early world maps, in contrast, seem to leap ahead of their time, almost as if they're based on a lost master reference. Consider that accurate longitudinal positioning requires a precise method of timekeeping, a marine chronometer, yet such instruments weren't developed until the 18th century. And yet we find maps dating centuries earlier that demonstrate correct longitudinal placements impossible to determine by dead reckoning alone. Either they had unknown methods, or they inherited knowledge from those who did. Let's explore how these maps may have been created, and by whom. Many ancient cultures possessed deep astronomical knowledge. The Polynesians, for example, used star maps, wave dynamics, and migratory birds to navigate thousands of miles across open ocean. They built their cognitive maps from environmental memory, passed down orally through chants and training. Some voyaging societies, like the Austronesians, reached as far as Madagascar from Southeast Asia by 1500 BCE. These were not accidental drifts. They were deliberate, sustained voyages of exploration and settlement. If isolated island cultures could develop such sophisticated methods, what could a coordinated continental-level civilization have accomplished? The ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, and Indus Valley civilizations all kept detailed star charts. The Dogon of Mali held advanced knowledge of the Sirius star system. Ancient Chinese records mention long-distance voyages to faraway lands. Even Roman texts tell of Carthaginian sailors discovering islands in the Atlantic. All of this builds the case that ancient man was more mobile, more observant, and more capable than we've been led to believe. But let's go deeper. What if the source of this knowledge wasn't just trade or war or exploration, but a deliberate scientific program of Earth observation? A unified initiative spanning centuries, continents, or even civilizations to map the globe in full. There are legends of such societies. The Atlanteans of Plato's dialogues, said to be seafarers and astronomers, the sea kings of the ancient Indian epics who crossed oceans guided by the stars, the Lemurians hypothesized by early theosophists, and the mysterious Olmec heads that depict faces from distant lands. The suggestion is radical, that humanity once attained a level of global connectivity and navigational prowess we've since forgotten. This idea is supported by archaeology. Submerged ruins off the coast of Dwarka, India, thought to date back over 9,000 years, suggest a coastal city lost to the sea. The Bimini Road near the Bahamas appears to be a megalithic structure beneath the ocean. Off the coast of Cuba, sonar has detected symmetrical stone formations hundreds of feet below sea level. These ruins defy explanation by local histories. If coastlines were different during the last ice age, if sea levels were hundreds of feet lower, then ancient cities could lie beneath today's oceans. And if those cities launched ships or sent maps to distant lands, then the echoes of that knowledge could be what we see in these forbidden maps. Furthermore, we find remnants of what appear to be ancient harbours and quays on mountaintops and highlands. Lake Titicaca in the Andes contains massive stone blocks aligned in patterns consistent with ship mooring despite its altitude. How could such maritime infrastructure exist so high above sea level? Was the geography different? Or did ancient civilizations possess the ability to traverse vast and vertical distances in ways we don't understand? One of the most overlooked aspects of this mystery is the sheer persistence of navigational accuracy across time. If one map showed anomalous detail, it might be luck, but when multiple unrelated maps across centuries and cultures reflect geographic realities not known to their creators, we're left with a pattern, a thread, a signal that some deeper source of knowledge once existed and was lost. These maps hint not only at ancient travel but at ancient science, trigonometry, astronomy, geometry, data recording, geodetic measurements of Earth's curvature, the very foundations of modern cartography, encoded in maps supposedly made before such systems were invented. Some researchers believe these maps are fragments of a single ancient master map, passed down through libraries, trade guilds, monastic archives, and oral traditions. Perhaps it was preserved in Alexandria before the fires, or buried in temple vaults, or hidden in monasteries across Europe and the Middle East. What we are left with is a broken mirror, fragments reflecting a whole we cannot yet see. But one thing becomes clear: the world has been seen before, measured, known, mapped, not by myth, but by mind. A mind that understands more than we do. A mind that charted not only lands, but perhaps, if the next clues are true, the energies that flow across them. Because the next mystery lies not in the shapes of continents, but in the placements of monuments. What if the Earth itself was charted? Not just physically, but energetically. Planetary grid, a hidden geometry, a design built into the bones of the world. We'll explore that next. Ancient sound technology and sonic engineering. The greatest monuments of the ancient world weren't assembled with bulldozers, cranes, or diamond-tipped saws, and yet their creation rivals, if not surpasses, anything constructed in the modern era. From the enigmatic pyramids of Giza to the soaring stone walls of Sacsayhuaman, across the plains of Lebanon and highlands of Peru, lie stones so massive they defy our mechanical benchmarks. Some weigh over 800 tons, moved, shaped, and meticulously placed with an almost eerie precision. Their construction raises questions we're only beginning to ask. Could it be that muscle and manpower were not the only tools at their disposal? Could there have been another force, an invisible one, capable of transforming how we understand ancient engineering? Some propose that force was sound, a vibrational phenomenon so powerful it could lift mountains, carve through granite, and even affect the molecular structure of matter itself. For millennia, global myths have whispered of such capabilities. Tibetan lore recounts monks using rhythmic chants, cymbals, and horns to levitate stones across cliffs. In Egyptian temples, carvings show tuning forks, musical glyphs, and ritual acoustics interwoven with their sacred rituals. Sanskrit texts go deeper, describing mantras not only as spiritual tools but as precise vibrational instruments, capable of transforming material states, influencing health, and altering perception. These were not idle tales, but encoded transmissions of a science that modern minds are only beginning to grasp. Dismissed by early scholars as metaphorical or allegorical, these descriptions are being re-evaluated. What if they were literal? What if they were operating manuals for a forgotten vibrational technology? To understand this, we must consider what modern science tells us about sound. At its essence, sound is vibration, mechanical pressure waves propagating through air, water, or solid matter. When focused, intensified, or tuned, sound ceases to be passive and becomes a potent physical force. Contemporary experiments have demonstrated acoustic levitation, where carefully tuned frequencies can suspend small objects mid-air. In sonochemistry, ultrasonics initiate complex chemical reactions. Medical technologies use focused ultrasound to break kidney stones or image fetal development. These phenomena are not magic, they're reproducible empirical science. And they provide the foundation for imagining how sound might once have been used as an instrument of construction, healing, and transformation. Now, revisit the ancient world. The subterranean Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, over 5,000 years old, features a chamber that resonates at precisely 110 Hz, a frequency linked to theta brainwave activity in meditative states. The effect on visitors is both physical and psychological. Voices amplified, bones vibrating, awareness heightened. In Newgrange, Ireland, and within the Great Pyramid's King's Chamber, we encounter rooms built to amplify and sustain specific frequencies. The King's Chamber, made of piezoelectric granite, vibrates near 432 Hz, a tone aligned with harmonic principles in musical theory. This frequency has long been associated with healing and natural balance. Could these spaces have been designed not as tombs, but as harmonic engines, chambers that converted sound into energy or resonance? Sound technologies may be woven into sacred architecture around the globe. At Stonehenge, certain stones ring when struck, emitting pure tones like bells. Researchers now believe the monument's circular form may have been designed to focus and contain sound energy. In India, temple architects constructed resonant halls to amplify chanting and music, turning buildings into sonic amplifiers. In Peru, the acoustics of Chavín de Huántar allow whispers to travel clearly through labyrinthine stone halls, suggesting deliberate design for vocal projection. Even in prehistoric caves, the most elaborate paintings tend to be found where echoes are strongest. These spaces appear chosen not for aesthetics alone, but for their acoustic resonance. Cymatics, the study of visible sound vibrations, demonstrates how sound sculpts form. When frequencies are applied to sand, water, or metal plates, intricate geometric shapes emerge. The higher the frequency, the more complex the pattern. Many of these cymatic forms echo ancient symbols, yantras, mandalas, and sacred grids. Researchers speculate these were not merely spiritual representations, but design schematics, cymatic maps turned into architecture. Perhaps ancient builders visualized sound and transmuted its geometry into stone. Take Pumapunku in Bolivia. Here, stones are cut with angles, channels, and interlocks so precise they seem laser-crafted. No tool marks remain. The stones are massive, andesite and diorite, some of the hardest materials to work with, yet shaped as though by machinery. Could ancient engineers have used high-frequency vibration to soften or even mold stone? Laboratory tests with ultrasonic tools show this is scientifically plausible. Were the ancients not just cutting rock, but resonating it into form? Legends speak of massive horns, trumpets, and acoustic tools lost to time. The fall of Jericho's walls, caused by trumpet blasts, might hold symbolic memory of vibrational destruction. Across cultures, priests chanted to move objects or influence weather. What we dismiss as myth may preserve actual engineering memories distorted by centuries of retelling. Skeptics point to a lack of devices. But what if the devices were made of organic or degradable materials, wood, bone, or woven fibers, and have vanished? The architecture remains, massive blocks moved and placed without cranes, chambers that vibrate, geometry tuned to sound. If sound was once wielded like a chisel, these remnants become intelligible as more than anomalies, they become evidence. The reverence for sound echoes through cultures. From Om in Hindu cosmology, the primal sound of creation, to the biblical phrase "God said let there be light," Creation itself is spoken into being. Pythagoras, too, believed in the harmony of the spheres, a universe governed by vibrational ratios. Modern physics aligns with this. String theory posits that all matter is vibration. Perhaps then, ancient sound technology was not fringe, but fundamental. Recent studies explore how sound affects biology. Certain frequencies induce relaxation, repair tissues, or synchronize brainwaves. Therapies like binaural beats, solfeggio tones, and vibrational medicine are regaining ground. Could ancient temples have doubled as vibrational healing chambers? Were rituals not symbolic but literal interventions in human physiology? In the Great Pyramid, the king's chamber features a stone box that resonates like a tuning fork. Its dimensions match harmonic principles. Visitors report altered consciousness, intense vibrations, even visionary states. These are not random side effects, they are structured responses to acoustic environments. What if initiates underwent sonic initiations, using frequency to unlock spiritual states? At Chichen Itza, sound and light merge. During the equinox, light creates a serpent's shadow slithering down the steps of El Castillo. Claps near the pyramid return an echo mimicking the chirp of a sacred bird. This isn't happenstance, it's intentional multisensory design, a cosmic experience embedded in architecture. And what of us? Our bodies resonate. DNA unwinds and repairs with vibrational cues. Cells pulse in rhythm. The ancients may have understood this, that humans are part of a cosmic symphony. Sound wasn't just sacred, it was operational, a technology for body, mind, and spirit. Why was it lost? Wars, catastrophes, colonization, technological collapse. Or perhaps it was hidden, reserved for elites, buried under metaphor and myth. But its traces remain, in chants, in ruins, in the symbols we barely understand. As we rediscover the science of sound, we don't just unlock history, we unlock potential. Sound may hold keys to healing, to building, even to reshaping our understanding of the cosmos. And so, we press on. From vibration to biology, from granite to genome. In our next chapter, we descend into deeper mysteries, ancient DNA, hybrid beings, and the genetic echoes of a world that once was. Because hidden in the bones of history are secrets carved in DNA. We hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you did.